We'll go ahead and bring this committee back to order. We hope everyone had a great lunch. The good co-chair will be right with us. We're going to go ahead and get started on consideration of charitable raffles and drawings legislation. It's 27 LSO 0093.
The bill draft you should have in front of you is working draft 0.3. The short title is Charitable Raffles and Drawings. And as you all know, charitable raffles and drawings are exempt from criminal definitions of gambling if 100% of the net proceeds are used for charitable purposes. This adds additional requirements that the net proceeds be at least equal to 50% of gross receipts total. And it requires rulemaking for progressive style games. And these progressive style games are the games that the committee heard about at the prior committee meeting in May, such as Queen of Hearts types raffles where a person enters a drawing and the payout does not occur necessarily the day of that drawing. It occurs when it could occur at a later date, or the award could roll over to a later date until the final winning card is selected. So the committee heard about those last time. This bill specifies that those shall be included in rulemaking. The bill is fairly short. On page 1 is the title. It specifies that it relates to crimes and offenses, and it amends exceptions for the offense of gambling. It modifies the exception for raffles and drawings conducted for charitable purposes, requires rulemaking, and it provides for effective dates. On page 2 is the definition of gambling in the criminal code. A3 provides for gambling and what it is, but does not include any of the following. And here we have this exemption in H. It does not include raffles or drawings conducted for charitable purposes. The proposed language in underline red would add that are conducted for charitable purposes in accordance with the rules adopted by the Wyoming Gaming Commission under 1125-104-03, which on the next page we'll create, in which 100% of the net proceeds remaining after payment of costs, supplies, and winnings are used for charitable purposes. All is stricken there because the next sentence creates this requirement that net proceeds that are used for charitable purposes shall be at least equal to 50% of the gross receipts from the raffle or drawing. The last sentence on page 2 specifies that if the gross receipts are insufficient to satisfy the requirements of this paragraph, the raffle or drawing shall be canceled and all amounts received shall be refunded. On page 3 is the requirement that the Gaming Commission create these rules that are referenced. Within the Gaming Commission statutes, we're out of the criminal code now. We're in 1125-104. These are the Gaming Commission's duties and officers and organization statutes. O specifies that in addition to all of the duties, the commission and the reasonable exercise of its discretion shall, so to create a new 3, and that's to adopt rules for raffles and drawings that are conducted for charitable purposes under the prior statute. The rules would include all of the following. First is requirements and conditions under which winnings may be accumulated, awarded, or carried over to a subsequent raffle or drawing. B is standards for determining and calculating gross receipts and net proceeds. And C is requirements for documenting the use of net proceeds for charitable purposes. Finally, Section 2 specifies the Gaming Commission shall promulgate all rules necessary to implement the act, and the split effective date makes that provision, as well as the effective date, effective immediately, whereas the changes to the actual raffles would occur July 1st, 2027.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You mentioned Queen of Hearts. is that included in this as a raffle, or where exactly does that fit in? Thank you, Tamara.
Madam Chair, what the committee heard at the last meeting is that existing law allows for charitable raffles or drawings. Existing law does not define what is a raffle or a drawing. So the Gaming Commission has looked to definitions of what is a drawing and determined that a drawing is, and they can comment on their interpretation of this, but a drawing is something where there's a prize that's awarded. So if you are only going to win a chance to win a prize, the chance to pull a card, or no prize at all, you might pull a card that gets you nothing and it might carry over, then that would not be considered a drawing or a raffle for purposes of the exemption for criminal gambling. So under existing law, they're interpreting Queen of Hearts and progressive style games as being illegal. This bill would require that the Gaming Commission adopt rules for those progressive types games. And specifically, it's on page 3, lines 13 through 15. They would be required to adopt rules specifying the requirements and conditions under which winnings may be accumulated, awarded, or carried over to a subsequent raffle or drawing. So this bill draft does allow the Gaming Commission to adopt rules to govern Queen of Hearts and other similar types of games. But what drafting issue I ran into at the prior meeting was that the committee did want this to be able to be regulated, but it didn't seem to be consensus on whether the committee wanted these type of games to be allowed or to be made illegal explicitly. And so this is written vague to direct that to be done through rulemaking. If you would like to explicitly prohibit or allow within conditions, then we might need to tweak this, because right now it's just left up to rulemaking of the Gaming Commission based on the direction from that committee meeting.
Follow? Further questions? I do have one for you. In that same section on page 3, let me get my words together here. The legislature has the ability to create exemptions within law. Are we subceding that power to the Gaming Commission by allowing this rulemaking authority to create exemptions?
I think this is a good question. And I think that, I guess is the question, is it to the extent that it might be an unlawful delegation of authority? Or is there enough direction here such that it's, the legislature's intent that's just being allowed to be carried out by an administrative agency? And I think that's a good question. But I think that you do have room for amending this language to better articulate your intent if you believe it's an unlawful delegation of authority. Right now, we know gambling's illegal. That's the rule. The exception is when you're doing a raffle or drawing for charitable purpose. And now this comes in and says, by rulemaking, create the rules in which that can be a progressive style game. So put, perhaps you can only carry it forward for a month. It can't be done indefinitely for years and years. Perhaps you have to have it, paid out within a certain amount of time, or subject to a certain amount of drawings, or, some sorts of rules or conditions that could make that fit within the scheme and be closer to raffle or drawings where the payout or the prize money is awarded immediately. But I guess that was a long way to answer your question on an unlawful delegation of authority. I think it's within the authority of statute to specify that the rules shall govern this concept. But we are talking about a crime here, gambling, and this is an exemption to the crime. So if you allow an agency to define what that exemption is, and it puts conduct back in the crime, then you are allowing an agency by rule to change the criminal code.
Co-chair. Cole?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the work you've done on this. However, I'm a little bit confused on some of the outcome here. So we're talking about, the 50%, and 50% has to go to a charity. That was really clear direction, right? On this other carried forward, I think if we were ever to entertain such an idea of rolling it forward like that, there's going to have to be accounting. There's going to have to be all sorts of liabilities that have to be accounted for, like how the mechanism on doing it, because the nature of what we're talking about now of legalizing said of a progressive game. The testimony we had last time is that's not the way to go, legalizing progressive games. And so the idea was that we'd be clear about no progressives, and you could have a Queen of Hearts game that finished with one hand, not a progressive game. Because frankly, I'll just say it, we're going to make people criminals. They are going to be taking money. You got six-figure amounts of money here. Progressive, how many, like you said, how long? How long could they have a progressive game for? How many years? I don't know. But those are kind of the bigger questions. If we were to even figure out we wanted to do a progressive, you know, it's another whole bunch of regulations. So I'm concerned about that. But getting back over here to on page 2, and what about line 21? If the raffle or drawing shall be canceled, all amounts received shall be refunded. What's the requirements for them knowing who to refund the money to? I'm concerned about frankly, a bar situation and, you know, folks contributing to something that didn't work out. So maybe some thoughts on how we could put sideboards on that. If we're going to, I don't disagree, we have to think about refunding money, but we cannot have a slap shot operation where you're just taking money, throw it in a kitty, and then one time you're having a payout. How are they going to account for that? I guess those are my bigger questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Tamara?
Thank you. Yes, this is one area of gambling that is not well regulated or not thoroughly regulated. If we go back a prior session, the exception used to simply be raffles conducted for charitable purposes. The committee, through the Management Council and the Legislature, then adopted to require 100% of the net proceeds to be used for charitable purpose. This bill comes back and brings back an additional 50% of gross requirement, and then specifies that there shall be refunds. It doesn't specify how those refunds shall be conducted, how they shall be insured. Nobody has to get a permit to show that they're a charitable organization or charitable purpose that qualifies for this. So it's still an unregulated or fairly unregulated area of the law on gaming. And you can see that it's changing. It is becoming more regulated as you look at this bill draft and as you look at the work last year. But the refund requirement, I think, is one that would have to be administered by the Gaming Commission and probably would not be entirely enforceable until it actually came into effect. And it turns out that a raffle used all of their proceeds on prizes and had no money to actually donate to a charitable organization. And in that case, the requirement is that it be refunded and canceled. They could issue a notice to wherever they were advertising sales in the first place that monies would be refunded. But again, there's not a lot of specificity here and there's also not a lot of specificity under the existing law. This puts some teeth in, but probably not all of the regulation that you could imagine being detailed or better articulated.
Further questions for the LSO? Thank you very much for the presentation of this bill. Director Laramendi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Nick Laramendi, Executive Director, Wyoming Gaming Commission. This is a pretty short bill. I will tell you that I have a lot of points to maybe discuss with you all on this one. So I'll try to be very articulate in the way that I present this to you with some of our concerns. Before I do that, though, just a little background on the enforcement of charitable raffles in gaming. The way that the commission has looked at this is we have looked at this as traditional raffles, i.e. a nonprofit organization receives a donation from a company, let's just say, or a rancher for a full beef, and then they raffle that off. They sell the raffle tickets. They draw a winner. The winner gets, a full beef, and then the charity gets all the proceeds from that raffle ticket sales. When we look at raffles, we always look at them in the traditional sense. Same thing with drawings. The Queen of Hearts, when we started talking about the Queen of Hearts, the Wyoming Supreme Court has ruled that there are 4 elements to a raffle. And when you look at those 4 elements, and I have them in front of me, I think I provided them to you in our last one. And I don't know why this stopped opening. There we go. Maybe. The 4 considerations for a raffle is consideration, which it says each participant buys a ticket or pays something of value in order to participate. So there is that. There's chance. The winner is determined by a random drawing, not skill. So there is that. The prize. A prize or prizes of value is awarded to the winner. And this is where we start getting a little bit off the trail of a traditional raffle. In a lot of these, and I understand, we've heard testimony in some of these instances where they have, a nominal prize. If you pull, let's say in the Queen of Hearts, if you pull a 1 through a 10, you win $20. But the way that the court looked at this, it's the prize at the end of it is given away. In a Queen of Hearts game, what we see the majority of the time is you buy a raffle ticket for a chance to then gamble. That's really, it's nothing more than that. You get a chance to then pull a card, which is a random card, which is gambling. And the last thing that the court said is equal probability. The probability of any individual ticket being selected is equal and determined by the total number of tickets sold. This gets very dicey in a Queen of Hearts game or a progressive raffle because the equal probability remains for, let's say, the first week. After that, that equal probability is gone. It changes every week as that goes. So back to the bill, when we look at this bill, and I'd like to just kind of echo some of the concerns that were just previously made by the chairman, is that when we looked at this, we look at this as though the commission is being given rulemaking authority to legalize a new form of gambling. I just lost the word, not consecutive. Progressive raffles are not legal. They're currently not legal under state law. A traditional raffle is, and since Wyoming statute doesn't have a definition for what a raffle is, we would look to the common law definition of a raffle, and we would use the Wyoming Supreme Court case. So those 4 prongs, and I don't think we would end up getting to the same, the way this bill is written. I don't think that we would come to the conclusion that this bill kind of wants us to come to as far as legalizing a progressive raffle, because there's no definition of a raffle. So we would rely on the common law definition of a raffle using the Supreme Court precedent that we have in Wyoming, and a progressive raffle would be illegal. Madam Chair, too, please stop me anytime if there's things, because now I'll just go through the bullet points that I have on here. So we received the rulemaking authority, but we have almost no enforcement ability. And the reason being is because we do not license charitable raffles or drawings. There's not a licensing requirement for that. So if we promulgate administrative rules, the administrative rules that the commission promulgates is really for the licensees that we license. So for example, on the HHR side, we have a huge book of rules. They're all licensed by us. If they violate one of those rules, we have action against their license. We can take action against their license. In this instance, with charitable raffles and drawings, since there is no licensing authority, if we promulgate rules and they don't follow the commission's rules, there's nothing that we can do because they don't hold a license with us anyway. So then it reverts back to a criminal, the criminal code under Title VI, and then we would investigate it as criminal gambling and nothing else. Like I had mentioned before, it doesn't define what a charitable purpose is or what a raffle is. So what we have always done when we look at these raffles is we've kind of taken on the IRS's definition of what a charitable purpose is for for a raffle, which, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's, for example, my neighbor's house burns down. So the community gets together and they have a raffle. Again, they get a donation for something and they're trying to raise money for a raffle to help a neighbor. You know, the way that the IRS code looks at a charitable purpose, that is legit, but state law doesn't have what a charitable purpose is. So that may be something that you want to look at, is defining exactly what a charitable purpose is. This also doesn't say who is allowed to do those raffles. You know, when we had talked about the progressive raffles before, I know that there was some discussion of, do we want progressive raffles to be allowed for a charitable or nonprofit organization? Kind of like we do with bingo, pull tabs in Calcutta. Those are limited. The only folks that can do a bingo, pull tab, or Calcutta are a charitable or nonprofit organization. This doesn't have that in there. This basically, the way that we read this is realistically, anybody could hold a raffle, including a progressive raffle, as long as they're donating 50% of the 100% of the 50% of the gross receipts to a charitable purpose. So that may need to be thought about as well. As, do you want to limit this to charitable and nonprofits, or do you want to be able to allow every bar or really anybody to do these kind of raffles? The other one, because there is no licensing part of this, this goes to Chairman Kolb's point, the cancellation language. It is going to be very difficult for us to ensure that these are being canceled. Since there's no licensing, we don't even know where they take place. I suppose we could promulgate rules that have those reporting requirements that say, you know, you have to keep track of every ticket sold. You have to have their name, their address, their phone number. Again, that becomes pretty difficult for us to audit and follow through, because we wouldn't know if the gross receipts met the definition for a cancellation until after it was done. So it would be very difficult for us to enforce that cancellation. And I think this was also pointed out, progressive jackpots do create an additional accounting issue. There's ownership of carryover funds, required reserve accounts, how the organizations handle those funds, where they put them, and do they have to have them in a segregated account? Is it an interest-bearing account? Where does the interest go? There's a lot of things that need to be considered for that. One of the other things that we had identified that it's possibly problematic, I'm going to take that back. I'm not going to say possibly problematic. I will say it is problematic. The commission is required to have them document things, but we don't have the authority to then look at those documents. Nowhere in this bill does it grant the commission the authority to require them to provide those documents. If you look at the skill-based amusement games or the online sports wagering, or even the pari-mutuel wagering, there's specific language in there that says that reports generated for these types of activities must be provided to the commission upon request. This one does not have that. So if we go to a nonprofit or just say a bar that's doing a progressive raffle and we ask to look at their documents, they're going to say, well, what authority do you have to look at our documents? There's nothing in the statute that gives us that authority to. So then we're going to go again to the Title VI. We're going to have to build a criminal case, and then we're going to have to get a search warrant for those documents. With that, I think that's the majority of my points. So I'm happy to stand for any questions on this one as well.
Thank you, Director. Committee, any questions? Representative Webb.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My question is what do we do to strengthen this? Suggestions from the director.
Madam Chair, Representative Webb. So I think the first thing that we need to maybe understand, at least from our office, is do we want to legalize progressive raffles? That's an expansion of gambling. And if so, then there should be a specific exemption in the statutes under Title VI for progressive raffles. I think that would be probably the best starting place. And then, of course, there's caveats to that about licensing requirements, and then the rulemaking and all that other stuff would fall into it too. I hope that helps.
Further questions? Co-Chair Cole.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. A couple things, Nick. I guess, could you help me out with understanding criminal prosecution, like currently with your rules that you have, as it pertains to something like this, as the authority goes to enforce something? How do you do it? Is there the statutes currently in place allow you to impose criminal penalties? Could you give me some information about how that actually works? Like, where did you get the authority from in particular?
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, so that's a great question. So the way that it works under our rules, it's an administrative procedure. So if we have a violation of the rule, we do it administratively, like through the Office of Administrative Hearings, and we penalize their license or we sanction their license. We can issue a fine to them for, say, well, the statute says up to $10,000, and we can also suspend said license for a time commensurate with the offense. Now, in some instances, I'll give you one. So in our rule book, we have like the stimulation of an animal on the parimutuel side. So if a jockey was to be caught using what we call a machine, a buzzer on a horse, to stimulate that horse in the outcome of a race, we could hold him liable on his license. So we could fine him, say, $10,000 and we could suspend him for a year. But then there's also a statute that has a criminal penalty for that as well. So then we could also cite him into circuit court, and then he would go through the criminal court proceedings on that. In this instance, our big concern with this one is that we don't have the authority to, if they violate the rule, since they're not licensed, we really have no avenue other than to try to figure out how violating that rule is now a criminal offense. It's dicey.
Let's follow up.
Follow up?
Yeah, thank you. So it sounds like without the authority to issue a license, you're kind of with the inability to really affect a change.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, that is correct. We have really no ability to enforce said rules that we may promulgate.
Follow up?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So if we, just to ask a question, if we were to strike the accumulated or carried over part in page 3, after, I guess it would be line 14 to 15, and just get rid of the progressive part of this, would the rest of this work, in your opinion?
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, so I still think we would have to have some language in here that would require anybody holding a raffle or drawing to be licensed. Because again, we'd still promulgate rules, but since there's no provision in here to require them to be licensed, if they don't hold a license, if they violate our rules, then I don't really know how that would look.
Follow up?
No, thank you.
Further questions for the director? Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Director. You have the ability to charge them in court and to fine them, right? They wouldn't need a license. You can't. Didn't I just hear you say that? You have the ability to charge them up to $10,000, right? So what's the license? I don't understand the license then.
Madam Chair, Representative Johnson, so we have the ability to fine up to $10,000 to those who hold the license through our office. So any operator or vendor or employee that is licensed by our office falls under those penalty guidelines. But if they don't hold a license with us, we don't have the authority to administer. I mean, essentially, it's a civil penalty. So we don't have the authority to issue a civil penalty to, just your average person who's not licensed by us.
Further questions? Director, along that line of questioning, so talk to me about criminals that say are running a poker hall. You charge them criminally because they don't have a license?
Madam Chair, that is correct. So that would just fall under Title VI, criminal prosecution for illegal gambling. Depending on the circumstances of the case, you could have either a misdemeanor gambling. So if you're sitting at the table, technically you're guilty of a misdemeanor in taking part in the game. And if you are the host of said game, you'd be potentially facing a felony charge for, for promoting gambling.
Further questions? Co-Chair Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So Director, the intent of this was to try to first clean up this 50% question about anything left over would be distributed as a prize, right? That was the beginning of this. Then it kind of dovetailed into, well, what do we do about these Queen of Hearts games? Like, what can we do? And then after the testimony that you had given, it would seem like the progressives were out because there's no mechanism. And if you're saying that, then I'll put words in your mouth, but you're going to have a licensing scheme in order to do any enforcement. Well, then we would then have a situation where if somebody wanted to do this, they would be required then under some penalty to get a license through you folks. And I guess the question is there an easier way of doing this without getting you dragged into the muck here, where we just would cleanly say progressives are out and you have to have a total payout during the process of a game of some sorts, a pull tab game or something? What's your thoughts about going down this road and promulgating rules that would require licenses, as opposed to just saying, how do you think we can make this better is my overall question.
Director.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair. So I think, if you want to get back to the original raffle and drawing part of this, you would just keep everything on page 2 and 11. That does the 50% of the gross proceeds for the raffles, and then you strike everything else. Because the way that looks then is that a raffle or drawing has to have the 4 prongs that common law currently says it has, which is we're going to continue looking at it as a traditional raffle, i.e. a donated prize that you buy tickets for and that you may win. And then the proceeds of that, 100% of the proceeds must meet 50% and be donated to a charity. I mean, that just keeps it kind of back in line with what the original raffles and drawings were made to do, with that extra. Because I know that last time that we had looked, the concern was the way that it was written before is I could say 99% of the raffle ticket sales were part of my costs. And now I just donated $1 for $100 in revenue per se that I got. So this definitely makes it a 50-50 split even. So a 50-50 raffle, which I know has been questioned before, a 50-50 raffle under this, perfectly legal, because 50% of the gross, or the 50%, this is confusing. 100% of the net proceeds after the 50% would be 50-50. So that still is legal. And like I said, your traditional raffles trying to help, my neighbors whose house burnt down. Because I mean, that's, one of those unintended consequences of that when you start putting licensing requirements on this. I'll just give you a personal example right now. I have a friend of mine who's going through leukemia treatments, and they're doing a raffle right now for them to raise money for leukemia treatments. Now they're going to have to be required to get a license and then follow under these certain rules and everything else. And it's just a neighbor trying to help a friend. And I don't know if that's the direction that you want to go with that. I hope that helps.
Follow up.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, that's exactly right, Director. We're trying to help the average person in the state of Wyoming make a charitable raffle, give money to something that they think is important, for a good purpose, and not be onerous about the regulations. And once again, turning people into criminals for not following certain procedures, or temptation, for lack of a better word, can happen with a lot of money sitting around. I think those are important points. So if we could keep it clean and tight and help out the situation, and clearly, and I think part of this does that, but the overall, I don't think it's anyone's intent to make it harder for people to raise money for charities. So I thank you for your information though, Director. It's very helpful.
Thank you. Director, on page, oh no, it's not on any page. Could you talk to us about different ways that charitable organizations, when they call your office to be in compliance, is there some direction that you give them on ways that they can already be in compliance with the law and do charitable fundraising?
Madam Chair, that's a great question. So it kind of depends on in which realm we're looking at. So one of the common ones that we get obviously is bingo. Because bingo, you have to be a charitable or nonprofit organization. The way that the Title VI is written, it says that you can sell bingo anywhere in the state. So if I owned, or if I was the chairman of a charity and I had a charitable license or a bingo license, I could do a bingo night anywhere in the state. So one of the things that we have encouraged a lot of charities to do is partner with local partners. You know, we have some smaller charities here that really don't have a home. So they've partnered with some of our local breweries to where they'll go do a bingo night at that brewery. The bingo is being conducted by the charitable or nonprofit organization. They're the ones that reap the proceeds of that. And of course, the brewery is benefiting as well because they're drawing people into their brewery and they're making extra sales. So that's one of the ways that we've done it. Another thing that they can always do is casino nights, for example. So a casino night, when you start looking at the gambling statutes, it becomes gambling when you risk money for gain in whole or in part upon lot or chance. So if I'm going to a casino night and I'm sitting at a card table and I'm paying to play poker for a chance to win money or a prize, that is illegal. But if I wanted to create a casino night and I say, we're going to have a casino night, and the entry fee is $20. It's $20 to enter, and all the proceeds go to whatever charity, Acme Charity. That's it. And then they sit at the table and they play the games. And if they can solicit prizes for, whatever the case may be, whoever has the most chips at the end of the night wins a half a beef. I always go back to the half a beef, but that would be completely legal because those people are coming into the door. They're making a charitable donation at the door of $20, and they're not looking to pay that $20 for a chance to win 100. They already know that they're just donating to this charity, and they're going to just play a game. And if they win a prize at the end of it, they win a prize, but they're not going there for the purpose of winning a prize. Does that help?
Yes, thank you, Director. Further questions, Representative Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Director. You said that after the first week, there's no equal chance of winning a Queen of Hearts. Explain the reasoning to that. How does that game work specifically?
Madam Chair, Representative Johnson. So the equal chance, let's say the first week they sell 100 tickets. So there's 100 tickets in the bowl. So those 100 people have an equal chance of winning that first week. But then you move to the second week and they sell 50 tickets. Well, now their probability of winning is actually 1 in 50 versus the first group of people that was 1 in 100. So now they have a better probability of winning than the first people. Or on the flip side, if they sold 300 tickets, now the second week, they have a 1 in 300 chance versus the first week who had a 1 in 100 chance. So there's never that equal probability throughout that drawing because it changes with the ticket sales week after week after week.
Follow up?
So if they sold 100 tickets, if they sold 100 tickets each and every week, that would be equal. And no more, no less.
Madam Chair, Representative Johnson, I suppose, yeah, that could be equal because then everybody would have that equal 1 in 100 shot every week. But in order to do that, you would have to limit the amount of ticket sales, which would be kind of counterproductive to the point of what they're trying to do to raise the money.
Further questions for the Director? Thank you, Director. At this time, we'll take any public comment on this bill draft 27 LSO 0093. Welcome, Mr. Mosier. Happy birthday. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There's no better place I could think of to spend my birthday with all my legislative friends. Mike Mosier, Wyoming State Liquor Association. I wasn't planning on testifying, but this will be brief. Since progressive raffles were part of the discussion, Mr. Grigorchek, you would know him as Alf, is watching online, being in Casper. It was a little difficult for him to attend, but we do appreciate your reception with him before him at the last meeting. A couple quick things. I will gently push back on the idea of progressive raffles being an expansion of gaming because the Gaming Commission's been around for a while and it wasn't determined they were illegal until about a year and a half ago. These have been going on for a long time. So this wasn't legislative action. This was interpretation of a Supreme Court suit. So I wouldn't call it so much as an expansion of gaming, but just legitimizing something that's been going on for years. Now, right or wrong, and I understand that Mr. Laramendi and his attorney are quite able, and I'm sure the Supreme Court case is valid, but these games have been going on for years. So like I said, I'd push back on the expansion. American Legions, Elks Clubs, et cetera, have been running these games for years with no pushback whatsoever until fairly recently. Now, as correctly pointed out by Mr. Laramendi, there's been several states that have done statutes, passed statutes to authorize progressive raffles. I believe in those states, like in Wyoming, that had been happening for some time, but they decided to they'd codify them. One of them, as Mr. Laramendi mentioned, was Colorado. And in Colorado, it's kind of a catchy name. It was called the Bingo and Raffles Law. And it authorized progressive raffles, which Queen of Hearts is one of them. And like I said, whether Queen of Hearts or otherwise, they've been happening in fraternal organizations in particular for decades. One of the things that I think is very good, because I'm not sure how many more sideboards we need here. We're not talking about a bunch of criminals for the most part. What they need is guidelines. There are establishments that are still running Queen of Hearts because nobody's ever told them yet officially that they can't until somebody comes by. What happened with the Colorado Bingo and Raffles law is the Colorado Secretary of State maintains what is called a bingo, raffle, and law handbook. Which is a handbook for anybody who wants to operate these games, whether formal, informal, or otherwise, which tells them how to do it. Instead of finding out when a guy comes in with a badge and a gun that they're doing it wrong. And so I think a handbook like that would be a lot more useful in many cases than brand new statute, just to let people know what the rules are. It's a lot easier to find out what the law is by reading your driver's license handbook than when you get pulled over and get told what the law is. And so I would suggest that the other state that's done this, and this is interesting, Nebraska this year, I think it takes effect July 1st, 2026. Nebraska did a progressive raffle bill to specifically authorize it. In fact, even included Queen of Hearts by name, I believe. And so other states are doing this. It's a good thing. Now, one of the things I really appreciate about Mr. Laramendi when Alf was in front of you guys was the idea that not all Queen of Hearts games are Queen of Hearts games. Some of them use boards, some of them are regulated, and that's where I think rules comes in. If you're going to have these games, and I'm sure that would be agreed with, have rules that make sure that you're not just running them out your back door with a big piece of construction paper and crayons. You've actually got boards. You've actually got winners every time. We do that with other forms of gaming, bingo and pull tabs. Bingo, pull tabs in particular, you have to have vendors. They have to be legitimate. And so instead of banning, and I would maintain that we're still banning progressive raffles because it was just decided that they were illegal. Look at the idea of putting them in statute, making them okay, but regulating the heck out of them, similar to what we're talking about here. Now, in response to the 50-50, I don't care. I think most legitimate charities do that anyway, whether we do it or not. But part of my question is we keep hearing about criminal activity. And as a guy who goes to American Legions and Shrine Clubs and Elks Clubs and stuff, I just haven't seen a whole lot of criminal activity. So sometimes I'm a little concerned that we're throwing away the baby with the bathwater. We're making it more difficult for these nonprofits to generate revenue for charities because, yes, we are making it more difficult. Does Alf still have Thankful Thursdays? Yes, he does. Is he making as much money for Thankful Thursdays? No, he isn't, because he can't run certain games anymore. Is there an in-between ground where we can authorize what was authorized before and allowed before, but create sideboards to keep the games on the up and up? I think Colorado and Nebraska are good examples of states that have done it. I don't have specific proposals for you because I could probably dig deeper if you wanted them. I wasn't even planning on testifying. But on the other hand, I think it's important to note that number one, I don't consider it an expansion when it was completely done legally, supposedly up until about a year and a half ago. And number two, there are ways to regulate progressive raffles similar to bingo and pull tabs to make sure the operations are fair and good and everybody wins. So with that committee, I would be Happy to take any questions and thank you for the birthday wishes.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And happy birthday.
Thank you.
I think you might have misspoke. Did you say that Alpha's not making as much money for the
Thankful Thursday.
for the charity as he was, or he's not making as much money personally? I think I'd like to hear that correction, that he's not making as much money the way I understood it for the charity.
Madam Chairman, Representative Johnson, definitely for the charity, yes. The Queen of Hearts and similar progressive raffles were a main tool they used for Thankful Thursdays and other. And bear in mind, Alf MCs about every charity thing I've ever been to in Cheyenne. So he does a lot of things like this, and progressive raffles were not the significant chunk, but a significant part of the fundraising efforts. But yeah, Alf's, I hope he's listening, because I said, I'm going to say something nice about him. Alf does this for the right reasons. I mean, he MCs a lot of these charities for absolutely free. And so it's just the ability to be able to raise more money for those charities.
Further questions for Mr. Mosier? Co-Chair Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Well, Mr. Mosier, I don't know where to start with this besides happy birthday. I figure you're probably old enough to drink a beer, but the question I have first is, do you agree that the Supreme Court's an equal branch of government?
Madam Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, yes. However, interpretation of Supreme Court rulings can be up to different individuals.
But currently we do have a Supreme Court ruling, don't we?
I don't know when that ruling, Madam Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, I'm not sure when that ruling was made and whether it pertains directly to progressive raffles. And so I do know that attorneys tend to have different opinions. I'm certainly not one of them. I can't even spell Juris Doctorate, let alone get one. But I will say that that case hasn't been used up until recently. When that, and I don't know, maybe Mr. Larramenty can tell you when that ruling was made. I don't think it was recently because I don't remember it.
Well,
Follow up?
yeah. With that though, we got a situation where we have a testified to court ruling with 4 prongs that makes a legitimate game. It has to pass 4 tests. The progressives don't. That's the issue. And it's not me or you that decided this, the courts did, and we're dealing with it. So on that note, when we look at this bill, if we were to, we're not going to get all this respectfully, Mr. Mosier. If you want us to somehow come up with a scheme of doing this with all the intricacies of how a progressive would work, I don't see how, we're not close to that yet. However, we do have a situation which with the 50-50 part of it, where 50% would go back to a charity as after your costs are taken in consideration. Do you think that part of the bill, you agree with that part of the bill or not?
Madam Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, never have had a problem with it. The idea I'm addressing, and I think I mentioned earlier, the 50-50 thing is fine. I think it might be a little over-regulation. I'm not sure how it's going to be enforced. Does everybody need a license every time they do a charity raffle? But that being said, most charities I know already give that amount, although I'm not privy to a lot. I would generally push back, however, because unless that Supreme Court ruling was in the last year and a half, general interpretation must have been that it didn't apply to progressive raffles because it was never enforced. So people's opinions on Supreme Court judgments change. And so I know they happened until a year and a half ago. I'm not faulting, please don't get this wrong. I'm not faulting the Gaming Commission. Their attorneys read things a certain way, but it's up to the legislature to dictate policy. It's not that complicated. Colorado, Nebraska just did it. So what I'm saying is, and I'm specifically addressing that area, Mr. Co-Chairman, I'm not addressing the 50-50. That part's fine. What concerns me is the idea that somehow authorizing progressive raffles that have taken place for years as expansion really isn't, because all it does is take us back to where we were a year and a half ago, and putting up sideboards makes it safer for consumers and charities.
Follow up?
Yeah. Well, of course we want to make it safe. The issue would be is enforcement, regulation to make sure the money's, and they will be you put this kind of money out in a game, in a progressive game, that's 6 figures. I think it's reasonable that people would tend to maybe grab some of that if they had to, because there's no accounting. We have to have an accounting system to do it. I'm not opposed to working on progressive language for, you know, a progressive gaming, Queen of Hearts bill, but my point would be to get there, it's gonna take a lot more work than what I see here. I'm not opposed to looking into it. Like that was originally what we talked about is, well, what can we do to address it? And after the testimony that I heard from the Gaming Commission, it seemed like we didn't have a path forward because of the progressive nature of the Queen of Hearts game. Now, we haven't looked at the Nebraska or whoever, or other state yet for their language and how they did it. But I guess my point would be is if we're good with part of this, it does fix a problem, whether I guess you agree there's a problem or not, it does fix a problem with statutory language that happened from the last go around. So it does do that. I think bear with this select committee on trying to figure out how to get to a solution for progressives. I just don't know what it is right now. I would like to have your support for half. It sounds like we do, which is, I guess, you already answered that.
Yes, Madam Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman. Yes, and quickly, and I will shut up, putting Queen of Hearts and progressive raffles in statutes is how you keep away from 6-figure amounts. We supported legislation to put a cap on the amount on skill games. If you keep the progressive raffles at a lower amount, which you can, to avoid $300,000 or $100,000 payouts, then they become safer for the consumer. That being said, 50-50 is fine, but since y'all were talking about progressive raffles, I thought I'd have to come defend the honor of our American Legions and our VFWs and our Elks who would love running these games again because they've been doing it for years and charities have been depending on it for years. And I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bozier. I do have one question for you before you go. You kept saying a year to year and a half ago, this change. Could you cite specifically for me where that change occurred?
Madam Chairman, I would need to look at my calendar. The phone calls from me started about a year and a half ago from clubs that were saying a gaming enforcement agent with a gun and a badge just said we're committing a crime, gave us a cease and desist letter for Queen of Hearts. Started with coin pushers. You all know what a coin pusher is? Mm-hmm. Those silly little games. Well, that became a crime to have those because it was determined they were a game of chance, I believe. And those have been around since I was probably too young to drink. And then it became progressive raffles and Queen of Hearts. I'm not insulting anybody. They're doing their job. That's their interpretation of the law. But if you're a club that's been doing something for, and I think Senator McCune, you're intimately acquainted with veterans organizations. If you're a club that's been running Queen of Hearts for decades to help out veterans causes, and somebody comes in with a gun and a badge and says you're committing a crime and gives you a cease and desist letter, it's probably not a great way to build public relations. And that was the calls I was getting. And so that started about a year and a half ago, intensified about a year ago. There really hasn't been a group communication, as far as I know, to fraternal organizations saying don't do this, which is part of what I liked about the Colorado legislation. If we had a handbook for fraternal organizations or individuals that said, if you want to do a raffle, this is what you need to do. If you want to run a progressive raffle, this is the caps, this is what you need to do. I think that information, sometimes, maybe I'm wrong, sometimes information works a lot better than enforcement. People want to follow the law. A lot of times they don't know what it is or how to do it. I remember when we passed a bingo bill back in 2007, and we're requiring 50%, I believe, going to the charity. One of the people testifying against the bill openly admitted that the charity was only getting 20% of their proceeds, not realizing it was already illegal. And so a lot of people just don't know the law. So I think most people are honest. Most people do charities for the right reasons. They just want to do it legally, and they want to be able to do what they've done for years to help people, veterans being a close one to my heart.
Thank you, Mr. Mosier. It's duly noted that the public relations and a group communication could be improved upon. I just want to clarify with one question that if you're continuously breaking the law to earn money, that doesn't necessarily make it legal. Is there a justified cause by which you should appropriately ask a legislator to adjust the law and use that as a justification? Or is it that the law is the law and we should follow it?
Madam Chairman, all the places I know that once they found out they were illegal, but doing it. But on the other hand, they've contacted a lot of you, including some of your fellow legislators who've reached out to me, which is where I got the information about Colorado, Nebraska, and a bunch of other states. And so there is a movement, and I think you'll probably hear about it later, to legitimize or legalize progressive raffles with sidebars, similar to what Colorado and Nebraska did.
Thank you for your comments today.
Thank you.
Director, do you have a comment for us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of things real quick. So the Wyoming Supreme Court case was from 1985. And I would just offer this a little bit because I hear this a lot and I know we've talked about this before. This is not something that was legal that we determined was illegal. The only thing that has changed in the law was that the Wyoming Gaming Commission was made the primary investigator of all things under Title VI. I did 18 years on the street of cop work. I never looked twice at a quarter pusher. I was dealing with domestics or other things like that. I never looked twice at it. But our office has been given the specific mandate to enforce Title VI. So now that we have an agency whose sole purpose is to regulate legal gambling and investigate illegal gambling, that is what we've done. The reason that we issue cease and desist letters the way that we do is to ensure compliance. Yeah, a lot of them have complied with those. We've had some that have not complied with those. And the way that works is we work with the county prosecutors in all of these jurisdictions. When we identify these, we meet with the county prosecutor. We say, hey, this is what's going on at this location. How would you like us to proceed? Would you like us to proceed with a cease and desist? Or would you like us to give them a warning and tell them to shut it down? This is an interesting caveat because in all my years of law enforcement, I never gave too many verbal warnings for felonies. And that is in fact what we have been doing for the last 2 years. In a lot of these cases, we are trying to gain compliance. We are trying to educate the public. I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that this wasn't legal. There was just no agency that was primarily charged with looking at illegal gambling. Now there is, and that's kind of what me and my team do. And I'm proud of the work that they've done.
Thank you, Director. I guess we have a question. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Director. If we had a law or brought in, like Mr. Mosier said, the Colorado law, or I think he said Nebraska, that do regulate the Queen of Hearts and progressive lotteries or games, and pass that into law, then that would solve the problem, wouldn't it?
Madam Chair, Representative Johnson, that is correct. It would be a statutory exemption, a policy decision made by you all. We have several states that have done that. New Jersey is another one. New Jersey did a exemption for progressive raffles. It's interesting though, because all of the states that have an exemption, they also have laws on the books about raffles. So there's clearly a difference between a traditional raffle and a progressive raffle. And I think I might have it on my iPad. But I identified 7 states that have a specific statutory exemption for progressive raffles that also have bingo and raffle laws in place. But they've made a carve out specific for progressive raffles. And yes, it would make it legal then.
Thank you, Director. Further questions?
Yeah.
Co-Chair Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Director, could you supply the Supreme Court ruling case to the LSO?
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, I'll get the full thing and send it to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Further public comment on this bill? Is there anyone online, Ms. Vaughn? We'll go ahead and close public comment at this time for this bill. Any comments from the committee? Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to investigate other states' laws allowing progressive lottos or progressive raffles and bring that up in our next meeting. See what, maybe we can allow this in the state of Wyoming.
Co-Chair Kolb.
Thank you, Chairman. Back on the bill. So if we were to strike the language, if I heard the testimony correctly on, down to, on page 2, line 18, after drawing, period, and strike the rest. And so it clarifies the amount of money that has to go to a charity. So it makes basically a minimum 50-50 raffle. I think that'll at least work on that language there and clean up that issue we had from the last bill that got passed, the statutory change. Now, the progressive thing, I think we have to work on that. But I think that's a big enough lift on doing progressive because it's been testified to that it has been considered differently than a raffle. It's a unique thing with the unique regulation that have to be associated with it. So I think at this point, I think we should just consider potentially another draft bill that would deal with that once we know more about it, Madam Chair. So that's my motion, is to let's just skinny this back down again to talking about at least 50% of the proceeds would have to go to a charity for a raffle or drawing.
The amendment is to go to page 2 and after the word drawing on line 18 and then strike the remainder of the bill. Is there a second? No second? Representative Webb.
I can't remember who it was that mentioned, but did I misunderstand? I thought that they said keep line 12 and 13 and delete everything. And now we're talking about doing just from the last word of line 18 on down. Could somebody clarify that for me as to what was said before?
Just to clarify, Representative Webb, you said to keep which lines on page 3 or
Yeah.
page 2?
On page 2, it was my understanding, and I may not heard it right, to keep lines 12 and 13 and delete the rest of the red in lines 16 through 22. And now we're discussing about just deleting, starting on line 18 with if, and then lines 19 through 22. I just want to make sure that we're going down the right path.
Might I call the director back up? Director, does this happen to ring a bell as one of your recommendations?
Madam Chair, it does, and I think I might have said it a little bit wrong. So in looking at this, what I think you would, if you want to get it to the 50, I'm just going to call it the 50-50 part of it. I think you would want to strike the red language on lines 12 and 13, which is the rule part of it, and then keep the remainder of the bill. And then strike everything on page 3.
Representative Webb, does that answer your question?
Okay, so your suggestion would be to keep 12 and 13, strike everything else.
Madam Chair, Representative Webb,
Red.
flip that. Strike 12 and 13, the red language, because there's going to be no need for the rules, and then keep the rest of it for the 50% minimum and everything else. And then just delete everything on page 3 on.
Okay. That answers my question. Is that where we're going with the?
Well, we're open for amendments. Representative, do you have an amendment?
Well, I would make the amendment that we follow the director of, or what the director has just suggested. Delete 12 and 13. Keep lines 16 through 22. And then delete things on page 3. Then I think we need to discuss what we're going to do with the strike of the word all on page or on line 15 also.
Representative Webb has made a motion. Is there a second for his amendment?
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. Discussion on Representative Webb's amendment. No discussion? All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. This amendment is carried. Do you need that repeated, LSO, or did you get it down?
Yes, I've got that down and there'll be conforming changes on within the title as well. And there'd no longer be a need for a split effective date. So the effective date would just be July 1st, 2027, absent amendment.
Representative Johnson.
Can we also amend this to allow for future draft of other laws allowing progressive raffles? And what I'm concerned is that if we just pass this bill alone, we're going to be waiting another 2 years to answer this question. If we can just include it into this bill, see what we can have next meeting, and maybe we can include it all together and have one bill that answers all these questions.
Senator Craigo.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So what the good representative is asking for is already in this bill draft. I mean, that is the whole point of the rulemaking, because I don't think we want to put all of the rules regarding progressive games into statute. The whole point of that additional language was to allow the commission to come up with the rules on how that's handled. Now, maybe it's overbearing or too burdensome. I don't know the answer to that, but that was the whole point of the additional language within the bill draft, was just that. So unless we're going to define it within statute and say it's legal and then just leave nothing else there, I don't know what the additional language would be. So maybe the representative can help us on that.
Representative Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think we need to put in statute what a progressive raffle is and allow it at this point. And if we hold off this bill until our next meeting, that's probably what we should do. We could answer all the questions at once. At this point, we have Director Laramendi is deciding he's going to side with the Supreme Court. And we have other people that think that that's probably not the appropriate way to go. So I would like to see if we could get something in statute that would allow progressive drawings. Thank you.
Thank you for your commentary. If we're going to move ahead with that, I would ask that the amendment then include a definition for charitable purpose, give an enforcement mechanism to the commission, that we identify who can run it, which means we'll need a licensing authority. What will happen to the funds that we carry over? It would be a very large conceptual amendment to resolve Director Laramendi's concerns with this piece of legislation. Co-Chair Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So I would like to add this. I think we should do some research on Colorado, whoever our adjoining states are that have current regulations that deal with progressives. Let's find out what that language is. We can speak to it in our next meeting and see if we can work that in there. I think we need a little more information here to see how they did it and see if it fits with our gaming commission under the rules they have to function under. I think that would be prudent. At least we could consider it in the next meeting.
Director?
Madam Chair, if I may, to Senator Craigo's point, we're happy to promulgate rules for these types of things. So yeah, we don't mind carrying that load for those progressive raffles. Once you all decide if you want the progressive raffle legalized and you make a specific exemption for the progressive raffle, I think you could use some of that same language that says progressive raffles must follow the rules and maybe just license progressive raffles. If you're going to hold a progressive raffle, you have to have a license. Your mom and pop raffle for the charity or the charitable purpose doesn't require a license. Just to make sure that you understand, we're happy to promulgate rules where we can.
Thank you, Director. Senator Craigo.
Question for the director. So Director, we wouldn't have to license the progressives either, correct?
Madam Chair, Senator Craigo, I think in order for us to promulgate rules and have enforcement authority over the rules that we promulgate for progressive raffles, they would need to have a license. So we could act upon their license if they violated the rules.
Follow up, Madam Chairman?
Yes.
That's true if we want to go the route of civil enforcement, but if we just want to make it a crime, you wouldn't have to have enforcement abilities, correct?
Madam Chair, Senator Craigo, that's correct. It would just fall under criminal gambling.
Madam Chairman, I mean, and the reason I'm asking that, Director, is that we might be creating additional work that we really don't need to, right? You could create a criminal enforcement mechanism, i.e. they're violating rules and regs and statutes. And if you have an issue, then you just refer them. You work with the county attorneys all the time on other stuff, just like we do in other areas of gaming. You just refer it out for a criminal prosecution. We just tell them they have to, for example, that if they're going to do one of these, they have to keep records. They have to do this, they have to do, A, B, and C. And if they don't, and you get a complaint, you can send local law enforcement to go investigate that and then follow up that way. But we wouldn't be creating an additional regulatory burden for you or for them. We'd just say, if you're going to do it, you got to do this. And we'd put more restrictions or more requirements on the progressive games. And maybe we do, like you said, the mom and pop type raffles. I don't know. Just your thoughts on that?
Madam Chair, Senator Craigo, yeah, I see exactly what you're saying. I think that's a good idea. I don't have any problems with that. It's not going to increase our workload per se. We have agents in the field investigating these things, so they would continue on the way that they do any other criminal investigation.
Thank you, Director. Further questions? Comments? Clear as mud where we're at?
Yeah.
Sounds good. LSO, I would like you to recap where you're at on the motion.
Thank you for the opportunity to clarify and make sure I get good direction. So this would be an amendment that has been adopted, where the only thing left, I guess, in the bill would be that, as you see it now, are lines 15 through 18, where the stricken all, and then the sentence, lines 16 through 22 would all be left. And then it would be a conceptual amendment, probably accompanied by research, copies of other states' laws and the similar elements. They include things like maximum amounts, whether it's 15,000 or 300,000, different states, whether they name the games, but other states' approaches, some research there, and then a draft base where you can work in your own approach to a model law similar to other states. So that's what I sort of have for the amendment for this bill. And maybe just for the committee's information, as we think about this entire concept and where we're at between the branches of government and we have all three. We're the legislative branch. This is administratively implemented by the executive branch, and we have cases where the Wyoming Supreme Court has decided things. So when we look back to why the Wyoming Supreme Court was looking at raffles in the first place, it's because legislation was fairly broad. Some would argue vague, that said bingo games shall be exempt. Raffles and bingos shall be exempt. Well, organizations like Eagles and Elks Lodge were conducting games. Then if they were facing criminal liability for that, they said, well, that law is vague. What does it mean to be a bingo or raffle? The Supreme Court tries to look to legislative intent to see what the legislature's intent when they passed the law was. And if it's not there, they'll rely on other methods of construction like Webster's Dictionary or canons of construction, common terms. And they said raffle's a common term. It doesn't include all of these kind of inventive electronic pickle card, bingo, pool tab type of games. So the Supreme Court articulated their definition of raffle of what they thought the legislature was trying to accomplish with statute. So the legislature itself can always come back and change what they want a raffle to be or what they think it should include. They can define raffle, they can define drawing. To the extent in this bill draft, they can lay the basics and give it to an agency to articulate more details on that. But that's all within the realm of legislative possibilities. None of this is inherently not going to happen or not able to happen because of a prior Wyoming Supreme Court case, and none of it has to happen in a certain way. The legislature within, the constitutional limits is allowed to change the law and change what kind of charitable games are allowed. And that brings me to one final point, is that the legislature did change the law by adding drawings. We had a prior definition of raffle in several cases arguing about, well, what is a raffle? Then a year ago, the legislature specifically added drawings, and no Supreme Court case or any other case that I'm aware of has looked at that and said, what was the legislature's intent with specifically exempting drawings now, with going in and saying raffles or drawings are exempted. Some of the legislators at the time might have thought they were allowing Queen of Hearts drawings. Some of them might have thought they were allowing something else. So that has not been judicially interpreted, and that is still vague. And I think all of this is to say that it would be good to put forth in legislation, clear legislation of what the legislature wants to happen and how they want that to happen as much as we can, to provide better guidance for all the other branches of government and the individuals and citizens.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this piece of legislation? So we'll run with that amendment and that research to be presented at the next meeting. Thank you, ladies. We'll move on to the next, which is break time. So we'll take a break till 3 o'clock and we'll see you back in about 10 minutes.
Decisive. Decisive.
We'll go ahead and come back from break. As we come back from break, we're going to hear 27 LSO 0098, online casinos and sweepstakes prohibited. Ms. Tamra, when you're ready.
Thank you. The version is 0.2. And at the May meeting, the committee heard a lot of information, a lot of new information about how the existing criminal law applies to online gaming and sweepstakes gaming. And I think this bill draft is a starting point for that discussion. The committee took in that information and wanted to see a bill draft and wanted LSO to work with the Gaming Commission to try to develop something to bring forth and talk about these issues more and learn more about them. So this bill draft is brought forward to you today. It's a Wyoming approach. It does pick up some terminology and some themes from other states, but it really is sort of a unique bill draft that's not perfectly modeled on any other legislation and operates sort of within the existing Wyoming statutes. So what it does is it makes operating or offering services related to online sweepstakes and online casinos, it makes that professional gambling under existing criminal law. So if you are operating a brick and mortar gambling house, an illegal casino of some sorts, and you were caught and it was not within the exceptions to what you could be doing, you would be charged with professional gambling under existing Wyoming law, likely, assuming all the evidence was there. And so that's what this bill sort of does. It's the same thing. If you're operating an illegal casino online as defined by the bill, then you're charged with professional gambling. So it just fits it under that existing felony provision of professional gambling. It doesn't have to work that way. This could be an entirely separate thing, but I tried to work it in absent other direction of how it would work and try to keep it sort of parallel to the existing crimes and the existing kind of code. So my staff comment kind of just articulates that and articulates some of the questions that were raised and the existing questions that are in law where gambling is defined to cover any game involving risking property, and property is defined in the criminal code generally as anything of value, whether tangible or intangible, real or personal, public or private, risking it for gain, the direct realization of winnings. And this raises questions of enforcement. I think we heard about what if it's not property? What if it's the representation of property? What if it's a dual currency system where you get some kind of a token online that represents something that you can use in exchange for something else? So this bill draft is intended to look to other states and how they've tried to define those terms to clarify that. That's what most of my staff comment provides. It also just brings in that language of the felony of professional gambling. You can see there on page 2, lines 26 through 31, it's a felony imprisonment for not more than 3 years, a fine of not more than $3,000 or both. This bill draft begins with the create section. Like all bill drafts, create and then amend. Although the create section is just a conforming provision, there's an existing consumer protection law in Wyoming within Title 40, and it governs prizes and notice for prizes and sweepstakes, kind of your common prizes and sweepstakes games that you think about or that have been around since the 80s and probably before. So this is a conforming new provision that just says nothing in the article. The existing law governing existing sweepstakes and traditional sweepstakes should be construed to authorize the operation, offering, or promotion of an online casino or sweepstakes game as defined in the criminal code. And these are the definitions we're creating in this bill. Most of this is within definitions, like much of the rest of the gambling code. Section 2 on page 3, the definitions as used in this article, professional gambling means first, aiding or inducing another to engage in gambling with the intent to derive a profit therefrom. So that's your operating of a illegal, roulette table in your basement or an illegal gambling hall, trying to make money as the house, intent to derive a profit. B is participating in gambling and having, other than by virtue or skill or luck, a lesser chance of losing or a greater chance of winning than one or more of the other participants, or this would create a new C, and that's operating an online casino or sweepstakes game for play by another person, or knowingly providing services for the purposes of offering or promoting an online casino or sweepstakes game for play by another person. That would include geolocation services, payment services, server hosting, platform services, gaming content, data services, promotion, and advertising. Then that last carve out is just to make very clear that this is on the operator side, not on the player side. And page 4, lines 5, 6, and 7 specifies that this subparagraph shall not apply to a person's participation in an online casino or sweepstakes game solely as a player. This is not going into the general definition of gambling, and we could go into gambling and say that it's an illegal crime to online gamble or to participate in an online sweepstakes game, but instead it just focuses on the operation, the business side of things. And that's because that's how a majority of the other states were running theirs when I looked at them and kind of took a survey. Not 100%, but it seemed like more of them were focused on the business operator than trying to prohibit people from, playing gaming or getting involved in these on their phone or on their computer. The next definition is online casino or sweepstake game, and this is very important because it defines the crime if you're operating one of these. So it's any game, contest, or promotion that is offered for play or conducted over the internet by use of a computer, digital platform, or mobile application or mobile device. That kind of borrows from our sports wagering statutes. It's B, involves directly or indirectly the risking or use of property or representative of value for the opportunity to obtain property or a chance to obtain property. And then C, enables a person to participate in gambling or wagering or simulates gambling or wagering activity. And then the fourth element, and this is an and, so it has to be all of these 4 things, has to be all of the first 3 things. And then D, kind of the safe harbor, is not a game, contest, or promotion or activity that if it's conducted with the applicable law is excluded from the definition of gambling under the definition section, or is otherwise expressly authorized by the laws of the state or federal law. So what this is intended to capture is that the other types of gaming that are legal in Wyoming, if they're conducted online, it doesn't make them illegal. If you're engaging in social, or if you're running a social gaming event with your friends and you do it on a phone, it doesn't become illegal simply because it's done on your phone or on the internet. If it's otherwise allowable under the exemptions or otherwise allowable under law, it's still allowable. Same thing if Indian casinos are allowable under federal law and regulations, they're still allowable under here, even if it's online. If prediction markets are allowable under federal law and they're conducted in accordance with federal law, they wouldn't be online casino or sweepstakes games just because they're done online. So that's that safe harbor indeed, trying to capture things that are otherwise legal. Then finally, representative of value means any unit as part of a single currency, dual currency, multiple currency, free play, promotional play, sweepstakes, entry, or similar system that may be awarded, exchanged, redeemed, or used directly or indirectly to obtain property or chance to obtain property. So that is the bill in a nutshell. And again, the committee had a lot of information at the last meeting and not a lot of direction. And so I think this is what came out of that, and it can be revised, or we can provide more information to help the committee make decisions on how the policy should look.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? I think that we'll move on to Director Laramendi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In regards to this legislation, we don't have a lot of input on it. I will tell you that the vast majority of the complaints our office receives surround these sweepstake or social casinos. Everyone that we've encountered so far are housed offshore in foreign countries. What we have found, the majority of them, and the reason why we get the complaints, is because they hold a Wyoming LLC. In a lot of these instances, in fact, one fairly recently that I was looking at, we received the complaint. I looked up the filings and I found the address, and it was a camper trailer park outside of Afton. The address was, it was unique. And I don't really know the Secretary of State's operating statutes on how they can dissolve things. I know we've had conversations with them. I know it's pretty difficult for them to dissolve things. But for us, on the enforcement side of it, we think this makes it very clear that these operations are illegal. Even though it will still be hard, I don't think the state's going to send me to a faraway land to make a arrest on this and bring them back. But it definitely makes it very clear in statute that those types of games, when they're being done for money, in exchange for money, it's illegal. And I would stand for any questions on this one.
Appropriately, or are we going to go after things like the platforms of the app stores instead of the individual players?
Madam Chair, that's a great question. So in the cases that we've worked on these, they don't have a lot of these types. They don't have geolocation services at all. And they're open to anybody who has a phone. They don't have no KYC or know your customer. As a matter of fact, there was one that I was working on, and I had my 12-year-old daughter create an account, and it was that easy. She created an account just like that. It didn't stop her from creating an account. If she would have gotten a hold of my debit card, we would have had a problem. But they don't have those type of things. So, we could look at, it would be on the criminal side. So it would be executing search warrants and everything else to find out who their server hosting is or platform services. In a lot of these cases, especially these ones that are offshore now, what we do is we refer them to the Internet Crimes Division of the FBI. The Department of Justice works pretty diligently in closing these offshore companies down. The problem is, in all honesty, they just change the domain and they pop up a couple of days later. Again, for us, this just makes it very clear that in the state of Wyoming, offering these types of platforms is illegal in the state of Wyoming. It doesn't mean that we couldn't, file a complaint with the district attorney or the county attorney here and get an active warrant, and then that would follow those people around. And then if they ever came stateside and got picked up, we could prosecute them that way.
Thank you. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and Director Laramindy. You're saying geofencing will not work. I'm kind of baffled. I know we had a 18 years or older porn bill that we passed, and to even visit the website, you're blocked right away, and you have to prove that you're 18 years old. Couldn't we just say anybody in the state of Wyoming cannot visit these sites? It seems like that would be a part of the solution.
Madam Chair, Representative Johnson. So I'm not saying that geolocation services don't work. They actually work very well. We require geofencing abilities on our sports wagering to ensure that you are within the boundaries of the state of Wyoming and you're not on tribal lands. We also require geofencing services on all of our advanced deposit wagering platforms to ensure that you are placing wagers in the approved counties and not on tribal lands. What I'm saying when it comes to this stuff is they have no reason to have any sort of geofencing services on their platforms, so there's nothing to look at. Now, on the prohibition of it, I would have to look to see what it would take the state to basically fence out the entire state. Again, the problem that we have, the way that I understand a lot of these geofencing service providers to work, is we would have to know the domain of every one of these sites. And they change them so rapidly when they're shut down by the Department of Justice. There's definitely ways to do that. And there's ways to spoof your location as well. So the online sports wagering, the advanced deposit wagering platforms that we use, they use very high grade geofencing capabilities that monitor for those types of activities, spoofing, using VPNs to skirt your location. I'd have to really look into that to see how you would geofence out an entire state for these types of activities.
Follow?
So we don't know, it's not impossible, but it's, could be a daunting task. But maybe we should look into that. I mean, that might be a part of the solution is all I'm saying.
Madam Chair, Representative Johnson, I would agree, not impossible. We'd have to look at how to implement that and then the cost of implementing that type of, I guess, prohibition, digital prohibition on this.
Thank you, Director. Further questions? Seeing none, thank you. We'll bring up Mr. Daughtry. Downing, sorry, Mr. Downing, sorry, wrong person. And your colleagues. And I do believe we have one or two online to go with him.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Jonathan Downing, appearing on behalf of Virtual Gaming Worlds, and I'm joined by Lloyd Melnick, who's the Chief Growth and Strategy Officer. We also have our attorney, Bill Gantz, and Sean Ostro joining for this part, if that's all right, ma'am. Okay. So just as we get started, you'll hear some background on the online sweepstakes that have been operating in Wyoming since 2012. And also a company that's also been remitting taxes under Wyoming's Consumer Protection Act as far as how they came into Wyoming and what they currently do. I think it's important as we have this discussion as far as the decision between prohibition versus regulation, and looking at when you're having regulation of good actors in the marketplace and customers know that they're operating legally within Wyoming, that serves as a means of ensuring that the platforms they're operating on are being done in such a manner versus some of these other entities that Director Laramendi testified to. So just as far as trying to bifurcate those issues as far as those markets. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lloyd.
Thank you. Good morning.
Excuse me. Could you grab your mic real quick?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Lean, Senator Cole, committee members. Thanks for the opportunity today to lend my voice to the start of what looks like a very robust conversation about the future of interactive entertainment in Wyoming, specifically why a ban on social plus games with sweepstakes is bad for Wyoming citizens, and instead you should institute a tax and regulatory regime. My name is Lloyd Melnick. I'm the Chief Growth and Strategy Officer of Virtual Gaming Worlds, VGW, the largest developer and operator of social plus games in the world, and one that's been operating across the United States since 2012. I want to add also that I'm a proud resident of North Carolina, which last time I checked is not offshore. So just wanted to stress that point. I personally have over 30 years of experience in leading interactive and video game marketing, development, and product. I used to work at companies including Disney and Zynga, which you might be familiar with, that are manufacturers of Words with Friends and Farmville. I mention that because I joined VGW in 2019 because my background in games fits seamlessly with what the company's roots in video games themselves are. And that goes back to the name of the company. It's Virtual Gaming Worlds. It was thrilling for me to actually watch how the company has grown since 2012, first as an industry peer and then being part of the team. VGW has clearly disrupted the video game industry and the gaming industry and entertainment industries overall by developing these new kinds of games that have met increasing customer demand and have responded to a non-gaming audience. There's never actually been a time like this in interactive entertainment. You're reading about it all the time, everything from new types of streaming media to prediction markets. It's really exciting for us. I mean, you've all seen the headlines, but it also creates a challenge for you, how to regulate those, how to keep it fair, and most importantly, protect the citizens of Wyoming. With us, it's created a really healthy online arms race of market competition, and it's not going to cease anytime soon. And it benefits everyone by giving them new opportunities, new forms of entertainment. If the legislature here decides to ban our Social Plus games, which are over 21 only, free to play with sweepstakes promotions, it will not only end this competition in an emerging field in Wyoming, but it will prompt your residents to play on illegal overseas sites, largely the ones described just before me, with no consumer protections. Instead, we recommend modernizing laws regarding sweepstakes promotions to give citizens more options, more protections, while generating significant revenue for the state. Wyoming can build on its time-honored tradition as a business-friendly state where innovators, entrepreneurs, industry disruptors battle it out in the free market by regulating or licensing, as well as taxing the Social Plus games industry. We're not afraid at all of this competition. As early practitioners of interactive entertainment ourselves, we have always expected to have to stand on our own merits against newcomers. It comes down to giving customers what they want. It should not come down to who has the most influence, but who has the most disruptive entertainment products. That's why we've made sure our products can withstand the test of time. And by the way, we've never changed the URL of any of our products since 2012. Since 2012, our games have been enjoyed by millions across the US. I want to stress that VGW has been offering our games, Social Plus games in Wyoming since 2012 online, and it hasn't had any negative impact on other Wyoming businesses. The majority of our players never spend a penny. They want to have fun entertainment on their personal devices. I mentioned earlier, some of our games are casino themed, but a key difference between being casino themed and being a casino game is that not one casino in the world has more than half their players not spending any money. That's what really, to me, reflects how we're not gaming, we're not gambling. We're video games. We're much closer to the apps you play on your phone, or even the apps you use for word processors or anything. More than half our players never spend a penny, and those that do average spending about $20 a month. That's very different than gambling, and it's a totally different business. Our demographics also an older clientele, and we are competing with other entertainment platforms like Netflix or Paramount Plus. I mentioned my roots are in product. I've actually only been doing government affairs for a few months, and always in my product onboarding, I have our new people looking at those products, Amazon Prime, Netflix. They don't look at casino games. They don't look at real money gaming. They definitely don't go to casinos. They look at entertainment products because we're not competing with those real money gaming operators, and thus we're not cannibalizing any of their business. And again, that's reflected. We've been here since 2012, and companies in the gaming, in the gambling space have thrived during that period. While I personally am a very proud game builder and have lots of products I would love to show you, I think what's also interesting about VGW is our focus is on player safety. Security and games integrity measures are the most important features that VGW has developed. Again, unlike some of those offshore companies that were described earlier, and what we do is second to none. And we do that not only because it's the right thing to do, but also it's the successful thing to do. Without player confidence in our ability to deliver our products and protections, our business would have gone out of business years ago. People would not have trusted us. The market's an incredibly efficient regulator. Players won't stay on products that they cannot or should not trust. Our customer safety and game integrity measures and personnel were in business from before at VGW from before when I started in 2019, well before there was any scrutiny of the industry. Again, we did it because it was the right thing to do. And again, unlike some of those other operators offshore that are not subject to regulation, they're not doing the right thing, we actually offer purchase limits. Our games are restricted to players 21 or over. We do have geolocation, so we are only offering our games where it does fit within the legal framework under sweepstakes regulations. We have activity reminders in the games that go off every hour. We offer players the ability to go on self-exclusion lists. We offer players the opportunity to take a break. But actually, one thing that distinguishes us from other industries is that whenever players do want to take a break, those breaks are non-revocable. That means if you add yourself to a self-exclusion list, unlike at some real money gambling sites, your self-exclusion will never be revoked. our site, it's irrevocable. That's very different in the gambling industry. It's very different in prediction markets. It's really what sets us unique and it really shows the difference between Social Plus and those gambling companies. On closing, I just want to say I want to be part of the continued conversation in the months and years ahead. We've provided some draft language for this committee to consider as an alternative to prohibition. Look forward to working with this committee in the future. Look forward to coming back to Wyoming personally on a legislative framework to update Wyoming's online sweepstakes law. One of the subsequent speakers is going to be an attorney who we've worked with in the past. He'll be joining remotely and able to present information on the current regulation of online sweepstakes under existing Wyoming laws in areas that we think we can build upon to address any concerns this committee has. We believe that by making these changes to Wyoming's existing regulatory and tax framework to offer online sweepstakes law services, they'll complement your concerns, but we want to be a partner in the process to make sure that we're delivering what's best for Wyoming citizens. Thanks, and open it to any questions or the next speaker.
Let's move on to the next speaker. Are you ready? Just so I get your name right. No.
MELNICK. Thank you.
Mr. Gantz and Mr. Ostro are both online. If they want to go ahead and turn on their cameras and mics.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me all right? Okay.
Please go ahead and proceed, Mr. Gantz.
All right. I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm not picking up audio from the room, but all right. Well, thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Bill Gantz. I co-lead the gaming practice at Duane Morris, which is a national law firm. I've been practicing in gaming law for 25 years. This includes advising retailers and businesses on how to design and implement sponsors of sweepstakes promotions. Based upon the language of the proposed bill, LSO 98, as well as the remarks of Director Laramendi, I think it's really important to understand the difference between the two things that are both, I think, attempted to be addressed here. An online offshore real money casino only offers real money gambling offshore. And the only way to even play those games is to pay. That is a completely different, that's gambling. And I'm not here to sponsor or speak for that. But the product that VGW has in the industry it sits in, and we have many clients in this space around the country, is a sweepstakes. And it's a valid sweepstakes, and it's not gambling for a couple of reasons. First, the core product is a freemium or a social casino game. That alone, those are companies such as licensed gaming manufacturers are involved in that space. There are countless apps on the App Store just offering people the opportunity to play a freemium, which is an amalgam of free and premium. It's a very common business model. It's about $20 billion a year. And that is throughout the entire country. And it's just, people play the games. You can play completely for free. If you want to make a purchase, you can get more gold coins to use more gold coins for entertainment. And the only thing you can win using the gold coins is more gold coins to play. That is not gambling under Wyoming law because there's no prize. People do pay. The vast majority do not, which is the same on the VGW site. And all they can get is more coins. And again, we have licensed gaming manufacturers who are running these types of sites. And some of them are doing close to $1 billion a year, just running these types of game sites that you've seen that people call social casino. The difference here is that what VGW has done and has been doing since 2012 is they have I've lost the video. I'm not sure if you can still see me. Oh, thank you. The difference is that because that is a bona fide product, as measured by the fact that there's a massive industry just with that alone, it's a form of entertainment. And because it's a bona fide form of entertainment and it's a bona fide service, it can be promoted like any other type of good with a sweepstakes. The sweepstakes coins are never sold. They're only awarded for free. They may be, like many other sweepstakes, be offered in connection with a purchase, but they're also awarded for free in many different ways, including your standard type of write-in. So it's a very different product that VGW is operating and that industry is operating. The sweepstakes, it's a free entry, so there's no consideration. The definition of gambling in Wyoming states that something must be staked or risked. That's under A3 of the very code that's being amended here. And I do want to talk about the amendment in a moment, but it's very important. And that's why all sweepstakes, if you want to do one with a cheeseburger or anything else, it's not gambling because the entry is free. Nothing is staked or risked. And yes, people do win money or valuable prizes in sweepstakes. That's been the case forever. And Wyoming actually does have legislation which does regulate sweepstakes. It's a bit antiquated because it doesn't really handle the current situation, which is the gamification of sweepstakes online. It's very common. It's not just VGW. It's when you get a random spin to decide what discount you're going to get on Instagram before you buy a purchase. Spin the wheel, get your discount, and make a purchase. That is an online promotion that is gamified. Free to enter sports brackets. Those are very common. Yahoo, ESPN, March Madness. Enter for free, win $1 million. They're doing that to promote their use of their product just like any other giveaway. Starbucks had an instant win game where you could use their stars to then spin something and win. Again, you didn't have to buy the stars. You got them in connection with the purchase. There are grocery store game piece contests that are administered online. You have second chance giveaways. You didn't win, do something online, sign up with your ticket and get a second chance. All of those types of giveaways that I just described are happening online. People are doing them for free and they are being conducted over the internet. And this is a similar gamification of a sweepstakes. The definition that is being proffered here, again, if you want to outlaw online real money gambling, you just add internet gambling. You just already have a definition of gambling conducted over the internet. But this definition is incredibly broad in the proposed bill. It literally would apply to any free to enter contest that's administered online that awards a prize. And I can read from the definition itself, adding things to professional gambling that don't require a payment. And that conflicts with the overall definition of gambling in A3 to add something in professional gambling that doesn't actually require a payment. It's a game or contest or promotion that's offered or conducted over the internet. It involves the use of a representative of value for the opportunity to obtain a chance to win or to obtain property. And it enables a person to participate in gambling or a simulated form of gambling. All the things I mentioned before, drawings, brackets, the collection of tab games, all of those things, that is a simulated form of gambling. The difference between gambling and simulated gambling is whether you have paid to enter. But when you have a definition that is like that, and then the definition of representative value in this particular thing, this particular draft bill, it means any unit used as part of a free-to-play, promotional play, or sweepstakes entry to obtain property or a chance to obtain property. There's nothing in there about staking or risks. I'm not sure what a unit is, but it could be just about anything. But this approach is overbroad. And my concern as a gaming lawyer, is that if you make this a felony, just the using of anything that allows someone to enter some sort of contest online, even for free, and criminalize it as a felony, that's a big problem. It also creates a big problem for the business owner, because the lawyers, the civil lawyers, will attack it as gambling and bring civil claims for class actions, arbitrations, gambling loss recovery acts, and all the other things that keep me and the rest of the lawyers on my team busy. So this is probably not the approach to take. And I think it's inconsistent with the definition of gambling, which does require staking or risking. And there is a way to combat offshore, illegal, real money gambling without this type of overbreadth and approach. And that's one of the things that I would encourage this committee to do, is to, if you need more information about how the sweepstakes work, why they're lawful, we're happy to provide more information. We did provide an alternative bill, VGW, and building on the remarks of Mr. Melnick. VGW has already done all of the things that are listed in here for regulation. It has geolocation. It has KYC, or know your customer. It uses third-party tools and companies that verify the users. So you're not going to have a 13-year-old come on the platform. We have reasonable commercial measures to stop that for VGW. And all of the things here to protect the privacy, to limit any casino-themed giveaways to people who are 21 or older, to allow players, as Mr. Melnick, to suspend or close their accounts easily. These are all things that VGW as a market leader has already done. And what they're suggesting is that rather than limiting the sweepstakes rules as they are right now to, some restrictions on in-sale presentation and those types of envelopes and prize notices that tell people that they've already won a prize. Again, very common, very good provisions to have, but they're incomplete. And there's an opportunity here to modernize and to require any party who wants to engage Wyomingites in an internet gaming, in an online sweepstakes, that they would have to abide by these regulations. And importantly, the legislation that VGW has put forward would require people engaged in these types of games or adding sweepstakes that are gamified online, they'd have to collect sales tax. VGW already does. But that's another way to both protect the citizens of Wyoming and increase the amounts available for use by the state.
Mr. Gantz, we do have a
yes.
question from Senator Craigo.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Gantz, for being with us today. Just a quick question. How many states prohibit the sweepstakes and how many explicitly allow the sweepstakes? And are there some that do neither?
Okay. There have been about 6 or 7 states that have passed legislation of different kinds that would expressly prohibit the use of a game to award sweepstakes, or just trying to prohibit the use of a dual currency, but allowing other types. So the practice of all the states is not uniform. In Indiana, for example, there was a measure passed that prohibits this would prohibit the use of a dual currency model to award cash or cash equivalents. It doesn't expressly prohibit anyone from using that model to award a car or physical prizes, things that are not cash or cash equivalents. So every state has really approached this from a very different standpoint. And a lot of that, I think, comes from who the sponsor of the bill was. In California, there were tribal sponsors. In other states, the sponsors may have been licensed gaming. But I'm not aware that any of these bills came about because law enforcement or an attorney general or a gaming commission had so many consumer complaints or problems with this model that they were pushing for the legislation. And that's really important too. I mean, Mr. Melnick alluded to the fact that there was competition. Well, these companies, these publicly traded licensed gaming companies that have taken the same titles of their machines that they put in casinos and put them online so people can play the freemium type games that I described, they're one of the largest opponents of this model because it competes with them. I hope I answered your question, Senator Drago. I'm happy to answer any other questions. It is a really complicated area of law. I'll grant you that, but this is not real money gambling.
Thank you, Mr. Gantz. Do you have one more?
Madam Chair, one more who will be very brief. And if you would like more background on the actual bill proposal that we had, I can take us through that briefly after he's done.
Let's hear from him and see what questions the committee has.
Thank you. I believe that's me, Madam Chair.
Yes, please proceed.
Great, thank you. Chair McCall, Madam Chair Lean, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Sean Ostro. I'm the Executive Director of the Social Gaming Leadership Alliance. SGLA was formed in 2025, and our members include the largest and most established operators in this space, as well as the service providers that support the industry. To be clear, none of our members are Wyoming LLCs. We're certainly not located in any trailer parks. And our members do have robust Know Your Customer and use geolocation to comply with the laws in each jurisdiction. Social Plus games have been available in Wyoming for over a decade, and there are over 23,000 Wyoming adults that currently participate. It's a casual, social, entertainment-first product that people engage with for a few idle minutes at a time. As you've heard, they're free to play. More than half of the players never spend any money when they're interacting with our games. Among those that do make purchases, the median spend is about $25 a week, which is very consistent with a typical spend on other forms of online entertainment, things like video games and streaming services. So we do stand in opposition to this bill because it would eliminate this longstanding form of entertainment. It would take the same kind of heavy-handed anti-business approach taken by California just months ago. In California, as Mr. Gantz alluded to, it was spurred on by tribal casino interests. They used political entrenchment as a competitive advantage and banned the entire category. The consequences there were significant. California left more than $200 million in annual tax revenue on the table. California businesses saw over $1 billion in economic impact lost because of this legislation. So law-abiding operators, including the SGLA members, did stop operating their sweepstakes in California, but they were just replaced by a new crop of riskier offshore alternatives, many of which were based in China, which really puts longstanding consumers at risk. And so when you ask the California players, I think their response is pretty telling. They described the games as affordable, casual entertainment. They pointed to it as an important social outlet for seniors and people with disabilities. But overwhelmingly, they felt that the ban took away their right to choose what they want to do as adults. And very few believe that this prohibition actually solved any problem. It just took an entertainment option from them and pushed them towards potentially dangerous, unregulated alternatives. So we don't want to see Wyoming repeat California's mistake. Instead, what we're asking for is to modernize Wyoming's laws to protect those 23,000 customers that enjoy the games. As was alluded to, we have model legislation that includes things like operator registration and transparency, appropriate advertising standards, geolocation, consumer protections, and only limiting these games to people aged 21 plus. With that sales tax on Social Plus purchases, it would equate to about $3.2 million in annual tax revenue for Wyoming. And to the points raised by the gentleman at the Gaming Commission, we do think bright line rules and regulations for this industry will help fence out those bad actors. Will give the commission enhanced enforcement authority, but it will also allow law-abiding operators to continue to operate under a well-regulated, transparent regime that can protect Wyoming adults and keep minors from accessing the games. So, we'd very much welcome the opportunity to work with the committee, on this regulatory framework, encourage business growth and innovation. With that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you for your comments. Committee, do you have any questions for the gentleman before us? I do have one, and I'm not sure if Mr. Downing or someone online would like to answer it. You did just mention $3.2 million for Wyoming in sales tax. What is currently being paid?
Madam Chair, I don't have that actual figure. I do know, for example, VGW, which is one of the larger operators in the space, is currently paying tax, but I certainly can't speak for some of the others that are not members of our association.
For VGW, I don't have the data in front of me, but I'll provide it to Mr. Downing, who will provide it to you within
Thank
the
you.
day.
Further questions, committee? Co-Chair Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just kind of curious, we had a bunch of previous discussions on gaming addictions. Have you done any research to see if this is an addictive product? Have research about, is this a gateway product to in-person gambling? I mean, is there any, I guess, what do you know of this as being a potential, frankly, gateway situation for other types of in-person gambling?
Mr. Chairman, so we don't have research specifically on whether it's a gateway, but given our demographics, I would suspect it's not. We also have a very, I think I touched on it, but we have over 30 counselors, and they're all ex-social workers who monitor and speak with our players to ensure that no one is spending inappropriately, that they're not addicted. Addiction is actually something that even all of our customer service account managers are trained to look for. In terms of being a gateway, I would doubt it just because there isn't much crossover between us and the gambling space, but I don't have any research to prove that.
Follow-up?
As the follow-up. And then the other states besides California that was pointed out that had banned this, what were their reasons for banning it? Are you aware of the other states besides the couple that were given?
I think it's, as Mr. Gantz mentioned, it was largely driven by real money gaming companies who do see us as a competitor. I think incorrectly, and I've actually reached out to both tribal and casino interests to discuss it with them. But, for example, in New York, there's strong gaming interests. A lot of real money gaming companies have looked at the ban bills as gateways to legalizing online gambling. They've kind of attached them into the same bill and been using that to start a conversation in states that they don't have regulated online gambling. I'd almost refer to us as collateral damage.
Follow-up? Further questions? Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm asking you for some help here. You want us to separate you from the casinos, online casinos. How could we do that? You both operate off the internet. How could we separate the good from the bad? Just help us out with that if you could.
As Mr. Gantz said, we're not online gambling, so we don't fit the definition of gambling. We're an online gaming product, just like a Words with Friends, Farmville, which is regulated under consumer protection, all of your other online regulatory statutes. That is why we're proposing language, though, because most of the statutes related to sweepstakes, and if you remember back to like the Publishers Clearinghouse with Ed McMahon driving around giving out big checks, those were written for a different generation. They weren't written for online. They weren't written for online promotions. And that's really what sweepstakes are. We think that's the regulation that needs to be modified and then probably regulated as part of the Attorney General's office rather than a gaming commission, because it's not gaming. It's not gambling. Again, the fact that 50% of our players don't spend money, I think shows it's a very different beast.
Further questions?
I think it's,
Co-Chair Kolb.
yeah, thank you. But 50% do spend money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Or it's a little less than 50%, but yes.
Would you talk to me about a freestanding game console and what does that look like in your world? Is this something equivalent to a Pac-Man or is this something equivalent to a skills game?
It's entirely online, if that's what you're getting at. So we have no one in the Social Plus space, so the organization that Sean leads or any of our competitors have anything freestanding. I think our competitors are other online social game companies like a Zynga or Scopely if you play Monopoly Go. We don't consider, and I don't think skill-based game companies consider us competitors in any way.
Thank you. Further questions? Thank you, gentlemen.
I do have a
Oh,
question.
Co-Chair Kolb, sorry, you're not quite off the hook.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, it just kind of dawned on me. What do you consider the risks of what you do? I mean, when it comes to the public, I mean, this is a public issue here, frankly, kind of public safety in some ways. What downsides are there on this type of online activity?
I think there need to be strict consumer protections because you don't want underage players play. Because, you do have people who play too much. And, I'd argue that's the case with regular social games too, be it a Roblox, be it a Words with Friends. I also think in terms of driving it to more the offshore competitors, we do give out prizes. We literally give out hundreds of millions of dollars in prizes a year. There's other companies that promise those prizes and never deliver. And those are probably the ones where you get a lot of the consumer complaints that were referenced earlier. So I think there needs to be a really strong framework for protecting customers and ensuring what their promises are. As I said, we have 30 people who ensure that people are playing within their means, that there's no problem, there is no addiction. I think there needs to be some sort of controls over that. I would argue that's probably the case for the broader gaming space, but that's not the issue I'm debating today. But I definitely think in our case, we want to make sure it's a safe experience. And I think I mentioned it earlier, that's why we have been around so long, because our players don't spend too much. They only spend $10, $20, $30 a month, and it's part of the fun. But there are unscrupulous companies that kind of pull the money out, then change their URL. They're a different company and don't pay them back. I think that's what you want to protect against.
Co-Chair follow-up?
Yeah, just one more question about the offshore folks. We'll just say the Chinese folks, or whoever's operating offshore. You seem to insinuate that somehow with you not being there would make them, I guess, more viable. And that question I have is, why wouldn't they take the same space anyway? I mean, I can't believe.
Well, you have seen, well, I think.
Okay, hold on.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, it isn't a
Sure.
debate. I was just trying to ask a question about, you stated that, somehow you're stopping it sounded like somehow slowing down, stopping the offshore companies coming in because of what you do. And I'd like to know why that is. I'm confused on why they just wouldn't do it anyway. So could you help me with that?
They are doing it anyway. So in states where we operate, they are our biggest competitors. They're doing it. They have good products also. They're not entirely unscrupulous. And not every, I mean, we are an Australian domicile company, even though we have a big US presence. So there's good operators and bad operators offshore. There's probably good and bad operators that are American only. I probably have overused that term. But there are a lot of unscrupulous operators out there, and they are competing with us. And it actually creates frustration internally because they do things that we can't. And it has a very big impact on our business. But in states that have banned us, there's been, then they have the entire ocean to themselves. And as Sean referenced in California, you've definitely seen that happen. The size of the social plus space, they're not really social plus, they're pure sweepstakes operators, hasn't gone down. It's been replaced, they have just not had to face us as competitors.
Thank you, Mr. Melnick. Any further questions? Thank you. With this time, we'll open up public comment on the bill draft before us. 27 LSO 0098. Is there online public comment?
Madam Chairman, I do have Sarah Filosa from the Sports Betting Alliance and Brian Schroeder from ARB Interactive.
Please admit them. And then Miss Sarah, could you say your last name for me?
Sure, it's Filosa.
And then go ahead and tell the committee what you'd like us to hear.
Sure. Madam Chair, Chairman Kolb, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I know we're nearing the end of today's meeting and you're probably at the point of information fatigue, so I will keep my remarks brief. My name is Sarah Filosa and I am here on behalf of the Sports Betting Alliance. Our members include BetMGM, DraftKings, Fanatics Betting and Gaming, FanDuel, and Bet365. Together, they operate the overwhelming majority of licensed online casino market in the United States. We've worked with legislatures and gaming regulators across the country as states have considered whether and how to authorize iGaming. We're here today with one very narrow request. We're not here to weigh in on whether Wyoming should regulate sweepstakes casino platforms. We believe that decision is entirely with the committee, but our request is simple. We just want to remove references to licensed online casino gaming or iGaming from the bill. None of our members offer iGaming in Wyoming, and none have attempted to do so. Our members only operate in states that have legalized iGaming, and only after obtaining the licenses required by those states. Simply put, licensed iGaming, and I should emphasize licensed iGaming, is not the product this bill is intended to address. In states where legal, iGaming operators undergo extensive suitability investigations before they are licensed. They comply with rigorous technical standards, geolocation requirements, anti-money laundering rules, and identity verification requirements. They implement responsible gaming safeguards, submit to independent testing and auditing, and remain under continuous regulatory oversight for as long as they hold a license. In states where it has been authorized, that regulated system generates hundreds of millions of dollars annually in tax revenue. Sweepstakes platforms are fundamentally different. They do not operate under state gaming licenses. Instead, they rely on a promotional sweepstakes model that currently falls outside of Wyoming's gaming laws and Wyoming's Gaming Commission's jurisdiction. Whether and how to address those platforms is the question before the committee. Our concern is simply that this draft conflates two fundamentally different products. Licensed iGaming is a heavy regulated industry that does not exist in Wyoming. Sweepstakes platforms, by contrast, are operating in Wyoming today and are the focus of this legislation. Including references to iGaming in a bill aimed at sweepstakes is unnecessary and risks creating confusion. Because Wyoming has not authorized iGaming, online casino gaming is already prohibited under state law. The Attorney General has the authority to enforce that prohibition, making these additional references somewhat redundant. Removing references to online casino games would not limit the committee's ability to regulate or prohibit sweepstakes platforms, nor would it change Wyoming's existing prohibition. It would simply keep the bill focused on its intended purpose, provide greater clarity in Wyoming's gaming statutes, and avoid unnecessary ambiguity. With that, thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Seeing none, I appreciate it if you hang out in the background just in case there is one that comes up.
Thank you.
Next, Ms. Vaughn.
Mr. Schroeder, you can go ahead and proceed.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, Mayor and Chairman, and members of the Select Committee on Gaming. I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you today. I know it is the end of the day, so I will abbreviate my remarks as fast as possible. My name is Brian Schroeder. I'm the General Counsel at ARB Interactive, the company behind Moto and the owner of Publishers Clearinghouse, a brand with more than 70 years of lawful sweepstakes experience. ARB was founded in 2022 and is the largest US-based social plus gaming company in the country. We serve millions of players nationwide, including here in Wyoming, who are looking for a fun, trusted way to play casual casino-style games on their phones. Participation in our sweepstakes is always free with clear alternative methods of entry, and compliance with state law is a top priority for us. I'm submitting testimony in opposition to Wyoming Draft Bill LSO 0098, which would prohibit social plus gaming and the online sweepstakes in Wyoming. Participation in social plus games is always free. Players never need to bet money on game outcomes, and any prizes are awarded through the sweepstakes promotions. The same legal framework that has governed Publishers Clearinghouse and its consumer promotions for generations, and the same framework Wyoming already uses to regulate promotional prize offerings. Social plus operators have operated lawfully in Wyoming for years under the existing framework. This is not a hypothetical or a future market. It is active today. ARB and other social plus operators already invest heavily in the safeguards that this committee cares about. Age verification, know your customer checks, anti-money laundering review, geolocation controls to confirm players are physically located where they are permitted to play, and responsible social gaming tools. self-exclusion, deposit and playtime limits, and resources for players who may need help. We are concerned that the draft bill would eliminate the legal market and its consumer protections without achieving the committee's likely goal of protecting Wyoming residents. If social plus gaming is banned, Wyoming residents very likely could move to unregulated offshore platforms that provide no consumer protections and no accountability, as we already heard about. Banning the activity does not eliminate the demand. It pushes that demand into less regulated, less safe environments. Offshore unregulated operators are not reachable by Wyoming's criminal law, and they're not going to stop operating. While these felony provisions fall hardest on US-based compliant companies like ARB and Publishers Clearinghouse. Again, I want to thank you for the opportunity for submitting the testimony. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeder. Any questions, committee? Seeing none, thank you. Further public testimony? Seeing none. We'll go ahead and close public comment at this time on this bill draft. Director Laramendi, could we ask you a question or two? Thank you, Director. Hearing from these individuals, we're talking about this social gaming platform. What does the commission do to currently regulate what's happening in the state of Wyoming?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when you start talking about the social free-to-play casinos, we don't take any enforcement action on the free-to-play stuff. That's completely within, the legal framework that Wyoming has. When the commission starts looking at it, I would just point you to the definition of gambling in Title VI. It says gambling means risking any property for gain contingent in whole or in part upon lot or chance in any game played with cards, dice, balls, or any other gambling device, or contingent on the happening of an outcome of an event, including a sporting event. And then it starts listing the exceptions. So when we look at gambling, it's, am I paying for a chance to win something? And is that chance controlled by chance? Or that the opportunity to win, is it controlled by chance? So is there some sort of random number generator, or is it something that I have no control over? So the statute doesn't say that it's just cash type games. If I pay $5 for a chance to win a car, that's gambling. In the state of Wyoming, that's gambling if it doesn't fall under one of those exceptions. So that's how we look at those. I can't speak specifically to the previous speakers. Those aren't ones that we've ever looked into. Those aren't ones that we've received complaints on. The ones that we do receive complaints on are largely the offshore companies where people are investing thousands of dollars and they build up these huge pots of money. And then they try to cash it out, and then all of a sudden their account is closed and the operators have run away with that money. But to say that all of these, are just legal, like I said, without understanding how they really work, I think there's an argument to be made that it could potentially still be gambling, the way that the gambling statutes are written currently.
Thank you, Director. Does anyone on the committee need any clarifying questions? Co-chair?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Director, you stated that you don't know a lot about this particular situation, that people were explaining on how they were doing this raffle or whatever it might be they're doing, but you don't enforce. You haven't to date enforced. I guess those type of activities that they were explaining that they're doing. So it sounded like that is all right, unless you investigate, I suppose, and find out it's actually a gambling activity, that falls under the criteria that you have to enforce.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, that is correct. So these types of investigations are all complaint driven. So when we start getting complaints on these locations, then we open a case, we investigate it, we see if it falls under the definition of gambling. Like I said, as it stands right now, a lot of these are offshore companies. So we've been issuing cease and desist letters to offshore companies. And then we are also forwarding that information to the Internet Crimes Division in hopes that the Department of Justice can shut some of these domains down to stop them. For the previous speakers, I haven't specifically looked at their operations, you know, as how they operate. We'd have to look into those to see if, you know, if it falls under strictly the Consumer Protection Act or if there is a gambling nexus to those as well.
Follow up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on that note, would you'd be amenable to maybe interact with these, the folks that just testified on what they're exactly doing? And you could look into that to see if there's an issue with conforming to Wyoming state laws that you have to enforce.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, absolutely.
Further questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Director. I appreciate the clarifications. Committee, we've listened to public testimony. Is there any amendments for this piece of legislation? Representative Webb.
Thank you. We've listened to a lot of stuff today, and this is going to be a little bit lengthy for an amendment. But it's a concern that I think that we as a committee need to address. It's been stated that this is a public safety issue, and it is. We're attempting to address online gambling, but I think we also need to include our in-person gambling issue. As has been mentioned earlier, our legislation is fairly broad, and some would say vague. Sometimes I feel that we're trying to piecemeal building a palace. I think we need to decide as a state, what do we want? I know my constituents are concerned in my area about the growth of gambling and what it's going to do to the community. I had an experience about 6 weeks ago driving down to Salt Lake City, 20 miles past Evanston. I had seen, when I passed through Evanston, I saw the new casino, had it out of my mind, and all of a sudden a dark, cold feeling came over me that somebody was going to be going home that night back to our neighboring state, Utah, and the family wasn't going to get fed. Are we being good neighbors? All for the simple term of the word revenue? We're enabling people to make a greater mental health disorder than we already have. I'm not so certain as we don't need, well, and this whole thing, this whole gaming thing, the last 2 years that I've sat on this committee is just sprawling. It's like a cancer growing through our state, in my opinion. I think we need to look at doing something to thwart the growth of not only online gambling, but in-person gambling in the state of Wyoming. And I would like to propose an amendment to this bill to do that. Thank you.
Do you have direct verbiage that you would like us to consider as an amendment? Or a conceptual amendment for the LSO for us to consider?
I don't know that I have direct verbiage right now. Whether it's a moratorium, but we need to step back and not just piecemeal this whole thing together. We are a select committee that has met 3 times this year. Well, this is the second time. We met 3 times last year. This is a bigger problem. This is a bigger issue than we can address in that short period of time. So as far as some type of a conceptual verbiage for this, I would need some help from my colleagues here. If
Co-Chair
there's an
Cole?
interest.
Yeah, hang on a second. We're working on a draft that prohibits this, just to be clear. This isn't expanding anything. It prohibits it. And we are building this one step at a time because it's a massive problem that's just got out of control in the state of Wyoming. That's why we're here, trying to figure that out. And you know, the old joke about how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So that's what we're doing. So this bill isn't about prohibiting all gambling in the state of Wyoming. This bill is particularly about prohibiting what the bill states as per the title of the bill. So I would like us to keep on track on this bill draft. If we want to propose something else later on, then I suppose we can go down that road. But this bill is particularly a prohibition. I mean, if you read the title up here, online casinos and sweepstakes prohibited, which it's not an expansion. So I think for another time, we don't have the bandwidth. We have 3 meetings as stated this year, and we're not going to have time to get anything done. If we, start talking about some other subjects right now, we're trying to be successful and make an improvement. And this is what this draft legislation, as we agreed in the last meeting, is doing. So we're here to discuss this draft proposed bill. So I think we need to kind of just focus on the topic here. Let's talk about this. Let's get this behind us and we can move on and talk about those other items that other members would like to discuss, and we can bring up proposed bill drafts. So I just like to add that in to kind of bring us back on track.
Representative Webb.
And I agree with that. I just didn't know the appropriate time to bring this up. But here we are talking about this problem and there's just things that were mentioned and I thought this is the appropriate time. But if we do it after this particular bill draft, I don't care, but we need to address this issue of what we're going to do.
Co-Chair Cole?
Madam Chair, well, thank you for being part of this task force, select committee. We can talk about that, but one member's opinion does not dictate the entire body here, just to be clear. But we have a chance to speak about it and have other people agree and buy in on it if that's what happens. And that's how these committees function. If you want to bring an individual bill to ban all gambling in the state of Wyoming, you're more than welcome to during the next legislative session. And I think that's another way of handling it. We're going to run out of time, frankly. And I'll just leave it at that. Let's stay on the work we have in front of us. We got plenty to do, and the day is late. Personally, I have to drive almost, over 200 miles to get back to where I'm going, a little bit shorter than you, Representative Webb. And let's try to move the ball forward. I think might be a better plan right now.
Any additional amendments proposed for this piece of legislation? Hearing none, is there a motion on the legislation, or would you like to see it again with a consideration moving to the next meeting?
Oh, I'd move the bill at this point. I think it's ready to go as much as it's going to be. And have a vote on it, either up or down, and we find out what happens. Unless there's something else that people would want to conceptually change on this at a later point in time, Madam Co-Chair.
Co-Chair, I appreciate your moving the bill. I would like to see some of the information that comes from our Gaming Commission and where they're at on regulating things like the sweepstakes. What these games that were brought to our attention, are they currently illegal? Are they operating under a separate law? I don't feel like I have enough information to vote on this bill draft, thus I would be a no to be able to move forward with it. But if I didn't ask if there was a second. Is there a second? A second for the movement of this bill to go forward?
And for the purpose of discussion, Madam Co-Chair.
Yep.
That's for clarification.
I think we do have to get some more information from Director Laramundi about what exactly the other mechanisms are that are offering these online products, and to see if there is an issue with them factually, because if there is no issue, there is no problem. I think that's true. So for the sake of discussion, I'd withdraw my motion, and I would let Director Laramundi then look into what exactly these other types of products are and report back with what he had found.
Director, do you have some
Madam Chair,
comments?
Mr. Chair, I'll get that stuff compiled for you. Even with some historical stuff on some of the other cases that we've worked. I'll work with these folks behind me and we'll kind of go through the Wyoming Consumer Protection Act as well and just kind of see where everything lays out. And I'll get that provided to you soon.
Thank you, Director. With that and the withdrawal of the motion, we'll go ahead and see this draft again, just carry it forward as is with no amendments. Does the LSO, do you have a copy of this that was provided to us to amend the Consumer Protection Acts? It was submitted via VGW. Could we also see this in a draft format as well?
Yes, so that would come back as an H draft from this committee, modeled on that concept.
Yes, please. Thank you for working through that piece of legislation. We'll move on to the Wyoming Gaming Commission structure.
So at the last meeting, this topic came up of prior efforts related to the Wyoming Gaming Commission and the commission as a body and amendments that had been thought of in the past to revise that body. And rather than request a new bill draft, the committee requested that the prior bill draft that was introduced in 2000, or it might actually not have made it through introduction. I might have to have someone check the bill vote history, but it was proposed for sponsorship by the Joint Appropriations Committee in 2025. It was House Bill 138, and it was a result of their interim work in looking at different structures for the Wyoming Gaming Commission. And the concept, I guess, just very simply was to make it more of a professional commission. That the Wyoming Gaming Commission, of course, there's a lot of history there, and it used to be the Pari-Mutuel Wagering Commission, and it's been through several evolutions. It's a volunteer essentially board with 9 members who receive reimbursement when attending meetings, but otherwise now have a very large job to do as more and more gaming is regulated in the state of Wyoming. And so the discussions that interim were about revising that and having it look something more like the Public Service Commission, which is a smaller commission that is more full-time, actually paid salary, treated as state employees. And so that's what this legislation did. You can see in the draft there quite a bit of new language in the Wyoming gaming statutes to go in and revise the composition of the board from 9 to 5 would be appointed by the governor, consent of the Senate. That part would be new. A lot of discussion, if I remember right, in the interim with the Joint Appropriations Committee about the experience and what qualifications and who should be on the board. Where they settled with in this introduced bill was just 5 years of professional experience. Just professional experience to be on the Gaming Commission, to be appointed and confirmed, and keeping at least one member having been an enrolled member of the Northern Arapaho or Eastern Shoshone Indian tribe. Then each member would receive a salary, no longer just on that reimbursement type of compensation, an actual salary. There'd be a chairman and a deputy chairman. They'd hold those offices for 2 years. They could be reappointed for terms of 6 years, and their terms would go from 4 to 6 years. They could be removed as is authorized by the governor or by the appointing authority. The vacancies would be filled by the governor in accordance with existing statute. They would have to take the oath required of officers under the Wyoming Constitution. The conflict of interest provisions is revised, and that was a fairly substantive policy change in this bill, that it's no longer just cannot vote on a thing that the member might have an interest in or that the family member might have an interest in, but something that they cannot have an interest. and family member relies on an existing definition in statute. The liaisons that are in existing law, that looks like they're created new there on the bottom of page 3, subsection J, but they are not. They're just being moved from another part of statute that's repealed at the end of the bill. This was sort of a bigger effort and kind of came out of an effort of reorganizing some of the statutes that didn't end up working out. But some of that still, you see some of that in there. And so if this committee were to redraft this from scratch, there might be things that could be technically changed that would no longer be needed or might not be the will of the committee. Those legislative liaisons would continue. And as well as the governor's liaison, they would not be paid full salary as commissioners would. They are just reimbursed salary per diem and mileage as is provided for legislators when attending meetings. Then for the duties of the Gaming Commission, they would continue to be able to appoint a director to oversee the administrative duties of the commission. The director would continue to be able to employ employees to perform the duties imposed upon it. And the state would be required to provide offices, equipment, and facilities. A lot of this language is just kind of conforming the Gaming Commission to look more like the Public Service Commission statutes. On page 5, additional requirements would be to hold meetings, to have some hearing authority as necessary, and then conforming statutory changes on pages 6 and 7. And then the repeal section is repealing things that would conflict if this legislation were to go forward. The existing requirements for the 9 members of the commission and their way or method of appointment now. They're appointed from the appointment districts, 7 out of 9 from the appointment districts in Wyoming. One of them has to be a law enforcement member. One of them is a tribal. Then we have the legislative liaisons that are repealed and then recreated, as well as other conflicting statutes on disclosure and personal or private interest. Section 3 is just all about how this happens and how we roll over from having a 9-member commission that's currently appointed and serving to becoming a 5-member commission. And so this is how it was set up at the time, is to specify that the president and 4 other members selected by the governor would continue on. The rest of them would not. Then they would serve staggered terms. And the timing is set up to align for that Senate confirmation that could occur, at least if it were modeled the way this bill was drafted, it would occur during the 2028 budget session.
Ms. Denver, we have a question.
Mhm.
Co-Chair Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question about maybe if you knew the history on how they came up with the idea of adding the tribes to be one of the voting members of the 5 instead of a non-voting member. You remember anything about the conversation on why they thought that was the appropriate thing to do?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do remember some of the conversations and existing statute, and I don't know why existing statute. I don't remember the history, and I would have to look up the history, and maybe the Gaming Commission would have some memory of that. But that's been an existing law that one of the members of the existing gaming commissions is a member of the tribe. And so there was interest in continuing that. And I think there was support from the tribe at the time during that interim of the tribes and seeing that continued as well.
As the follow-up to that, it just seems that tribes' interests and the state's interests aren't aligned. Not that I disagree that we should involve the tribes as a non-voting member, but I just wondered why the tribes be involved with an operation that would basically be deleterious to their operation, and it would not be beneficial to them fiscally. So was there any conversation besides, I guess we did it before, so we want to do it now again? I'm just trying to understand exactly how that would improve this commission, if you know anything about it. Thank you.
I think you're exactly right to point out that this commission does not regulate the tribe. And so it's appointing a member that's in a competing type of industry that is not regulating the tribe. But I don't have any memory of a specific articulation of the benefit that tribal members brought and the expertise that they brought to the commission and why they should be kept on.
Follow-up?
Yeah, just a follow-up. The contrary to that is, do we have anybody on the tribal gaming commission, if they have one? I wasn't trying to say we can regulate the tribe's
Oh, right.
gaming activities. I didn't mean that. I meant so much as I think they should be a part of this, but I just question the voting member status of that appointment. But if we don't know, we don't know. Thank you.
Yeah, I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I probably will not represent their testimony well that they brought forward at that time and was compelling enough for the JAC to continue them.
Please continue.
I think the other important thing for the committee to know, other than kind of how this rolls over and how the 5 members get to be selected and continue on and how their terms would be staggered, is the appropriation. And this was set up at the time to be an appropriation for 1 year. It's for those 5-time full-time positions of the commission. The appropriation amount is 2 years old now, and it was $965,000. I believe that worked out to be about salaries of $130,000 per commission member. It was comparable at the time to the Public Services Commission, and works out, of course, to be more per member because it's salaries and benefits, and in the state of Wyoming, state employee benefits are a large sum percentage equivalent of the salary position. So that's 1 year of funding, and it would come from the parimutuel account as drafted. And it would be doubled to be included in the Gaming Commission standard budget for the immediately succeeding biennium. So it would go ahead and be made equivalent to 2 years. I do believe we've had some changes in compensation since this bill was drafted. So an inflationary or setting it equal to the Public Service Commission at this time could be done to see how close or whether those have changed.
Committee, any questions? Representative Webb.
Thank you. Is there a definition somewhere of professional experience? What are we relying on there?
Thank you. That I do recall during that interim being something that was amended. There's no definition. There was policy debate about changes from existing law. I think existing law relies on professional regulatory experience, whereas an operator, somebody who'd run a business the entire time, would not necessarily have had experience as a regulator. So there were considerations about changing it to professional experience related to the gaming or gambling industry. And eventually the committee just decided on professional experience, whether it be, professional, normal accounting jobs, attorneys, any kind of professional experience that the governor thought professional enough would be eligible to be appointed.
Follow up. Further questions? Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And would a clergy be professional? I mean, a member of the clergy could be appointed by the governor, right? I mean, that's a professional position, or a mental health provider. That's where I'm going with these things. I think we need to have a different point of view maybe than just gaming is good, and maybe have some alternative ideas in the committee.
Tamara?
Yes, I agree that a professional experience could encompass about anything that people generally would think of that you would do as a job and be receive salary or compensation for. I think that it's quite broad, and that it could be anything that the governor thinks is professional enough to carry out the duties that is required under the act, and then the Senate believes is professional enough to go ahead and confirm each of those members. I think about the only thing it does is ensure that somebody has 5 years of some kind of experience. So maybe it's an age limitation of some sorts, but it is vague, and it was discussed, and it was kept vague during the JAC's work of this bill.
Further questions? I do want to talk about the different structures that Wyoming has when it comes to different boards and commissions. We have things like our Public Service Commission that are 3 attorneys that are working for the benefit of the Wyoming people. And then we have things like the Wyoming Gaming Commission that are I mean, they're governed by the laws that the legislature passes, but we don't oversee their budget. There's not a lot of hands-on with the governors and the overseeing of checks and balances. So if we're moving towards a professional gaming commission in the state of Wyoming with this current legislation and the definition being professional, we'll go back to it, professional experience, do we stand to be in a better position than where we are now with our current board?
Madam Chair, I think that's just the policy question that the committee needs to decide if they think that more time devoted to this without in any way diminishing the existing efforts that are being made right now, but whether more time and pay being devoted for this to be a full-time job, whether the state would benefit or not, simply a matter of policy.
Further questions? Thank you very much. Director Laramendi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. From my position, I don't have much to add to this bill. I can certainly attempt to answer any questions that you may have as far as operational, the operational functions of what we currently do. So.
Senator McEwen.
Does the current system seem to work for you? I mean, are we really going to gain that much by growing this much more government? Thank you.
Madam Chair, Senator McEwen, that's a tough question to answer. I mean, we have a 9-member volunteer board. It's definitely a lot, as you all are now well assured of. There's a lot of gaming activity going on, and there's always a lot going on. So it's a 9-member volunteer board. This would make that to a 5-member professional board that is employed, 40 hours a week to address things that would be mandated by the legislature for them to address. I'm in an awkward position to answer that question, quite honestly.
Co-Chair Kolb.
Yeah, thank you. Madam Chair, well, I think that the issue is a lot of people don't understand the history. So maybe, Director, if you could explain to people how and what the original duties were of this volunteer board back when we just had horse racing, and kind of give us the evolution to where we're at and the money we're dealing with and the vast amount of issues you deal with. So maybe people can understand why, the board's just, it's a lot, and they're good people trying to do the best they can, but it's an awful lot. And there's a lot of legal technical questions, but if you could kind of give a little bit of background, Director.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, I can, and I'm going to do this off the cuff because I don't have my numbers in front of me, but I'll tell you that the Wyoming Gaming Commission started in 1967 as the Wyoming Parimutuel Board. At that time, their sole purpose was to regulate live horse racing, really at fair meets across the state. From 1967 to, let's just say, 2020, their sole purpose as the Wyoming Parimutuel Commission was nothing more than live horse racing. And then in 2012, that is when the legislature legalized HHR. So it was live horse racing and HHR. Now you fast forward just a short 6 years from 2020, the Wyoming Gaming Commission, we transformed from the Wyoming Parimutuel Commission to the Wyoming Gaming Commission. We now oversee live parimutuel racing, advanced deposit wagering, historic horse racing, online sports wagering, skill-based amusement games, and all the charitable gaming. So that's bingo, pull tabs, and Calcutta. The composition of the commission has still been a volunteer board that started in 1967 just to oversee live horse racing. And now, in addition to live horse racing, we have all of those other things. In addition to the administrative regulatory structure of live horse racing, let's just say parimutuel side, skill-based amusement games, online sports wagering and charitable gaming, we also have an entire law enforcement division. So we are now no longer a board. We are a regulatory agency that has a law enforcement arm that has statewide jurisdiction as well. So there have been massive changes to the Gaming Commission over the vast majority of it's been over the last 6 years. So that's a lot of it. And again, the overarching commission duties has also changed with that. But the composition of that commission has largely been the same since, the early rendition of the 1960s and 70s.
Further clarifying questions? I do have one for you. What would it mean to you to have an in-house personal counsel that works just with the commission versus the attorney that is currently shared with the Attorney General's office?
Madam Chair, that's a wonderful question. And I will tell you that our advising counsel through the AG's office is top notch. The problem that we have now is our advising attorney from the Attorney General's office oversees the Wyoming Gaming Commission and also oversees WYDOT. So we have two very, very large agencies that he is kind of dealing with. Gaming in and of itself, I'm telling you, I could keep an attorney busy probably 60 hours a week, not 40 hours a week. So his plate is very full and he is stretched very thin, and it's nothing that he can't do the job. In fact, if I was given the opportunity to have in-house counsel, I would do everything in my power to get him to be my in-house counsel. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. Further questions? Thank you, Director.
Well,
One more from Co-Chair Kolb.
Director. Can't get away that easy this late in the day. Thank you, Chairman. Could you explain maybe some of the legalities and the difficulties that you've faced from time to time with working with, frankly, a good group of volunteer people, but the challenges that somehow aren't very clear when you deal with legal issues, complicated legal issues, which would go back more towards having a professional gaming commission. There's a lot of challenges there, and I don't know, I realize it's a touchy subject, talking like I'm trying to talk, but if you could try to maybe give an example of difficulties that you face, frequently.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, this is a very difficult situation. So as it stands right now with a volunteer commission, we have several commissioners that have a background in some sort of regulatory or law enforcement type background. So for them, it's very easy. But we do have other commissioners that really don't have any regulatory or law enforcement experience or legal background. And it does make things difficult at times when we try to adjudicate administrative violations to get, certain people to understand the ramifications of certain types of violations. That can be very difficult. Does that help?
Co-Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I thank you for trying to explain that. It's not easy. I sit there as a liaison for the Gaming Commission, and I've seen it firsthand. And if somebody would like to talk to me in private, maybe some other explanation. I'll reiterate, we have a good group of volunteer people doing the darn best they can do, but it's an awful big ask to deal with this multi-billion-dollar industry and all the regulations and things that you have to deal with day to day that aren't really your choice. It's what you're charged with doing. So thank you for trying, Director.
Thank you. Oh, one more. Representative Webb.
Sorry. I just want to thank you for what you do and your committee, because I think you do a great job. And with the resources you have and the limitations that you have, I think they need a thank you. And then to follow up with that, it goes right along with what I said earlier. This is why we need to do something to decide what do we want. And I think we need to slow this thing down for a couple of years and get a focus of where we want to go. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll next invite the governor's office if they have any remarks. Welcome. Thank you for hanging with us all day.
Thank you. I'll be brief because I know don't stand between a sandwich or a steering wheel with the legislature. So thank you very much. I'm Sarah Dorenzo. I'm Governor Gordon's Deputy Policy Director. And thanks for the opportunity to just provide a few brief comments. I've been alongside this committee since its inception. I've seen the landscape challenges that you have been faced with and done a really great job of discussing them. The governor has believed, for his last, his 2 terms, that strong regulation is necessary to support this thriving gaming economy and protect the wagering public and promote clear and ethical, transparent gaming and wagering. And we've heard about the growth of the scope that the commission's had to handle with the growth of gaming. And it's no doubt that the commission is experiencing growing pains alongside the growing industry. The governor's very grateful that you're taking time to analyze the resources that the Gaming Commission would need to be successful in regulating this environment. But before turning to a professional gaming commission, his question is, are there resources that we can offer the Gaming Commission as an agency at the staff level that would be effective and helpful in regulating gaming before moving to a professional gaming commission? We certainly have, been in discussions about the challenges that the commission faces. But that's the ask of the governor, is to first consider investing at the staff level with some of the, maybe the specialized needs and expertise that the director has referenced as a good place to start. What we want a professional gaming commission to focus on, I think, is very worthy of in-depth discussion with the executive office, and acknowledging that that office will change as well. And so you won't be working with this administration moving forward. But, what is needed to support the day-to-day work of the commission, and what changes are necessary to confront and handle the growing pains that the commission itself, as well as the staff and the entity overall, is facing with our changing environment. So with that, thank you, and thank you for your continued looks to see what we need to do to, tackle our current environment and move forward to protect the public and have, transparent and a healthy wagering environment. So thank you.
Thank you. Co-Chair Kolb.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. With that, does the governor have, could you come back with recommendations, particular ones, to improve the current commission that we have? I mean, could that be possible?
Sure. Yeah.
I think you bring up a good point, and fair enough. So let's see what you recommend. Maybe there's some positive changes you think we can make, maybe work with your director under the governor's office, and come back with information in our next meeting, and we can discuss with what you come up with, and it might lead us down another path. But I think it's certainly worthy of listening what the governor has to say, what he believes is a better path to improve it. So if that's all right to do, or if that sounds amenable, Madam Co-Chair, that we give him some time to come back with a response.
Madam Chairman, Chairman Kolb, yes, I can do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for providing that for us. Further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. We appreciate your time and you being here with us today. We'll open it up to public comment. Is there any public comment moving forward with the Wyoming Gaming Commission amendments? Anyone online, Ms. Vaughn?
Madam Chairman, we do have one person, Miss Ellis. She testified earlier. She's online now. I'll go ahead and
thank you.
Bring her into the room.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Ellis.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Madam Chair, that I had to leave a little early. Affy Ellis, I was with you all earlier today. I just wanted to say, I remember the years that, the Gaming Commission or the Parimutuel Commission transformed into the Gaming Commission. And to answer Senator Kolb's, some of his questions, I know one of the reasons that we had a tribal liaison put on at the Gaming Commission was just the experience that the tribes brought. The Northern Arapaho have their own regulatory agency. And so I think that there was a desire to get someone with that kind of gaming expertise onto the Wyoming Gaming Commission. And so those are some of the conversations I certainly remember having when we were working on that bill to create the Gaming Commission. But I think to the points that have been made earlier, I think the concept of having a professional commission arose because there was just a lot of learning that needed to be done. And I just want to commend the Gaming Commission and the commissioners. They've certainly learned a lot and have been doing a lot of good work. And so I think, as going forward, if the committee decides it wants to work on this bill, I don't know that it's a matter of just changing whether or not they're professional commissioners or public members of the public. I don't know that things change a whole lot without maybe giving them additional direction. And so, certainly in my background, I've worked in other gaming jurisdictions and you see other best practices. And it might be worth, I think, good conversation to say what are some of the best practices in other states that could be also further incorporated into this bill. I remember looking at that bill and it talks about conflicts of interest in every gaming jurisdiction I'm familiar with. If you're a commissioner or a decision maker, you're not even allowed to play the game or wager on a horse for any activity that you regulate. And so those are things that, I would hope that we would spend the time as an industry and as legislators and as the commission to start flagging some of those other best practices to really strengthen and bolster the commission. So, whatever the body decides to do, please know we're willing to lend our expertise and want to be involved in those conversations. But I think without maybe looking a little bit broader at some of, and one question I have is what is the problem we are trying to solve with the current commission structure? I think that would be helpful for all of us to understand a little bit better. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Any questions? Safe travels.
Thank you.
Any further public comment? We'll go ahead and close public comment. Committee, do you have a pleasure? Co-chair?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, let's just hold this back. Let's see what the governor's office comes back with recommendations, and take those recommendations under consideration and then review the bill at that time. I think it's only prudent to give the governor a chance to comment on what he might see as an improvement and listen to that.
Thank you. Any further recommendations? We'll go ahead and move this one forward unamended, and we'll see what the recommendations are moving forward and address it at the next committee meeting. That brings us to committee directives. Is there any directives that we would like to take from the committee into consideration? Co-chair Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll apologize to the Select Committee on Gaming. I didn't get this in on the first meeting. And we were told, well, the reason why I'm bringing this up is Management Council specifically asked to look at revenue increases as it pertains to the gaming industry. So I would propose a bill draft that would be an increase on the handle for HHR by 0.1%. So it would go from 1.9% to 2%. And the discussion about where those funds would go, we could possibly put them into the problem gaming pool of revenue. That would be another topic, but I think I would like to I propose a draft bill that would increase the handle for HHR by 0.1%. And then we could have a further discussion if this moves forward, at our next meeting. But just to be clear, that was the direction from Management Council. Specifically when we were authorized to conduct business for this interim.
There's a motion on the floor to ask for a draft bill for an increase from 1.9 to 2% of 0.1 increase. All those in favor?
We need a second. No?
No.
Oh, okay.
Craig seconded. Okay. Cool. Second. There you go. All those in favor of seeing the bill draft at our next meeting?
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
We'll move ahead and see that at the next meeting. Is there further committee directives? Do you have one, Representative Webb? Listening to some of my colleagues, I recognize that there's a couple of things that we can do to become more compliant. Some things that we've identified maybe to ask for a bill draft on amending 1125-301. This would give the Gaming Commission the authority to remove non-compliant skills-based amusement games from service. It would add a new subsection D that would say, the commission shall have the authority to place any skills-based amusement game found out of compliance with this article or commission rules out of service pending resolution of a hearing before the commission. And I'd be happy to email it over as well.
Co-chair, you propose that?
Yes.
I would second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor of seeing it? Aye. Opposed? That one will move ahead. Further committee directives? While listening to the Gaming Commission, I'd like to propose a bill draft to amend 719-201 VI in, it would read, persons applying for an initial permit or license under Wyoming Statute 1125-104F, if required under 1125-104K, or if requested by the Wyoming Gaming Commission. This would allow for us to do one-time fingerprinting instead of annually fingerprinting, saving some money on the Wyoming Gaming Commission side.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Further bill drafts? Co-chair?
Could you say something there, co-chair? Yeah, I think we got a full plate.
Mhm.
And I say this, if we move these bills past management council, representative and myself will be flooring a lot of these bills, and there's only so many that a person can really do. So I think it sounds like we have an awful lot, but if the committee would like to entertain something else, that's our purpose, but we're getting a pretty full plate.
Committee directives or comments? Seeing none, could you give us a revised list of what you've got in front of you today?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have approved one bill for forwarding on to the Management Council. The other four will come back. The committee has also requested research to supplement some of those bills. Specifically, I might let others that have taken notes jump in too and correct me, but specifically some other research on how other states have dealt with the progressive style Queen of Hearts type games. Then the committee just requested 3 new bill drafts. One related to the revenue increase of 0.1%, one related to skill-based amusement games, and then the third related to the fingerprinting and the annual or one-time nature of that.
Thank you. Our next meeting is September 29th, I believe, in Evanston. And we look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you.